Okay, let's see if this works. Alright, it's going a bit too crazy. Okay, lately. How does this work? How did we do it last time? I think we are streaming right now.
Are you live?
I think so. Okay, let's just check OBS. Okay, this is fine. Alright, I have to hide like this, I think. Okay, we currently have some people here, so we are now streaming. There we go. Here. There we go. Select them. Alright guys, we're currently working on just getting this set up and we will be live in a second. Just post on Discord as well. We are just going to bring up some reference and then we are going to be sculpting this guy up and hopefully make him nice and scary. I've sculpted a bit more on him since last time, just a bit offline, just some more design work. And so this is currently where he is at. He is now as one mesh, just Dynamesh so far and keeping it nice and simple. Just going to brush the setup, which is I'm going to be using no alpha, and I'm just going to have an intensity of around 10 or 11 or so. Alright, then if we just go to here, and then we can see some comments as well. Okay, so if there are any questions, you can scream out. If not, we are just going to be sculpting on this. Can everyone hear me fine? I hope everything is set up correctly. I just want to make sure. So we're not really doing a Q&A this time. We will be checking the comments a little bit here and there, but it's not going to be like the same as we did a few days ago. This is going to be mostly me just focusing just being on sculpting. And maybe eating some chocolate and just having a good time. And Alpida is also here with me. And she will also be talking and answering some questions and yeah, just answering what you have on what you are wondering about.
Hello.
Alright, they can hear us fine. So what I've been doing since the last time is I've really just gone in and refined this guy a lot. He's fundamentally the same as he was in terms of like polygons. The only difference is I've just gone in and refined the muscles and his proportions and just made him a lot better. This was made with stylus. This was made with an actual display screen. I'm actually sculpting on this screen right now. I am from Norway and Alpida is from Cyprus.
Somebody is also asking if simulation is better in ZBrush or Marvelous Designer. I'd say Marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to talk about that, just go ahead. you have some thoughts on that?
Oh, Yasha Misterno. Somebody's Greek? Yeah.
Färdigsta.
I haven't really tried the new ZBrush cloth brushes too much, but from what I've seen, they're not really simulating, they're just brushes.
They are simulating.
Yeah.
They are actually simulating.
Oh, okay.
The simulation is not very good, but it does actually simulate it.
Oh, wow.
But it's very different from what Marvelous does, which simulates the flat things. This is more like collision and such.
Yeah, like Marvelous is really. I'm a Marvelous person myself. I think it's a very good simulation program. Yeah.
When do you do a face reveal? Are you talking about the Peter or are you talking about myself? Because I have my face has been a fair bit over the internet at this point. For a beginner with brushes that I use, you should be using Dam Standard, the standard brush, and Clay Buildup. If you want to learn how to use ZBrush though, I recommend that you check out our, it's gonna just plug our little website for now. We have some really nice training. We have actually a bundle right here you might like. This is beginner for 3D bundle. It's currently 50% off. And we have a bunch of cool stuff. What I want to show you specifically is Intro to ZBrush. This one will teach you everything you need to know about ZBrush in order to get started and goes through all brushes and everything. But in short, I'm using mostly Clay Buildup for this. Clay Buildup with no alpha.
Okay. Somebody's asking for my music. Oops. Somebody's asking for my showreel, my music. I think it's called Rock Angel, but I'll double check now. Yeah. Just.
Here's also a cool little tip for you, which is that if you go to Lightbox and under Tool, and here is a little guy called Ryan Kingston Anatomy Model. If you double click that, it's going to open up as a separate model with all the muscles. I've taken that guy and I've just made it a separate subtool, and I'm just looking at this. And this might blow your mind. This blew my mind when I accidentally clicked this button a few years ago. If you click split screen, check it out. Now, if we just move this a little bit to this side, now you can see it's going to split the screen and it's going to rotate around those like that, like so. So that's again under transform, and it's going to be split screen. The reason it's a bit wonky is because they're not in the exact same spot, but if you take this guy and just move him there, well, move her there, it's a female anatomy model, then we would do split screen. Now it's going to be right in the center. So this is a really powerful way of studying anatomy. For instance, if I want to look at the shoulder area right now, which I do, I want to refine this a little bit. Now I can just have this model open like this. The model on it isn't perfect, but it's really solid. it's really good in general for all your anatomy needs. And if you need something more than this, you probably have to start looking at real life reference. I'm just going to go in and refine the scapulas just a little bit. Currently it's a little bit muddy what's going on here. And when your scapulas get muddy, then it becomes very hard to sculpt anything. So it's really important that you get your scapulas right. If the back isn't working properly, then it's going to be very hard to make a convincing sculpt. And if your scapula isn't, your shoulder blade isn't working properly, it's going to be impossible to get the back to work. So always, always, always add the scapula like this. Then everything starts to come more together. Yeah, the split screen is crazy. It's really, really good. I really like it. The anatomy model, like I said, lives under Lightbox, Tool, and Ryan Kingsland anatomy model. It's been there for like a decade now. Nobody knows about it, but it's phenomenal. So I'm working a bit on the trapezius, and then I'm working on the scapula as well. I'm just going to push the scapula in a little bit. You don't want that to be purely on the surface, and we're just going to make it a little bit bigger as well. In general, your scapula tends to be around the same size as a hand. People tend to make it too big, but for this guy here, I'm going to do something a bit more Hulk-like. So while I'm sculpting now and it's not like a formal Q&A, I'm still happy to answer some questions here and there, as long as it doesn't take up all my time, because I want to get some nice sculpting done as well, so I can show you guys some cool little tips and tricks I have. So with the triceps, this one is called a triceps because it has 3 heads. It has this guy, this guy, and it has this guy. This is it's a bit of a stupid tip, but it has. It's almost a bit hard for me to remember which sides are the 2 heads on, because one side here has 2 heads, like you can see on the reference here as well. One here and then one there. And I tend to think that it's on the inside, and this is my stupid little mnemonic because it's closer to the surface, so it attracts more things. It's a bit of an irrational one, but it tends to work for me. Basically, on the inside, it just has more stuff happening. Just a quick thing for the split screen. That's if you have questions about that. The stream will be available on YouTube later on, but you just go here under transform and split screen. What it does, very simply, is it takes whatever subtools you have as the first one and the second one, and it just splits it out. This does not work well at all if you have a lot of subtools. Then this goes crazy. But if you have 2 subtools, it works really well. As a beginner, is it necessary to use to get ZBrush, or can you stick to Blender? Yeah, as a beginner, you can totally do that. If you want to do serious sculpting, you really have to get into ZBrush. But if you want to, if you're a beginner, then ZBrush is totally, then Blender is totally fine. ZBrush is a weird one though. It just kind of works based on its own ways. It doesn't really follow conventions or logic or anything like that. So it's a bit of a tricky one to wrap your mind around. But once you understand it, it's very intuitive. Once you understand ZBrush, you realize that you're using only a few brushes all the time, and that's really it. You really shouldn't overcomplicate ZBrush. Most things in any one of these menus and any one of these menus they're just superfluous. They are not needed at all. So we have a 1-hour free tutorial on YouTube, which is basically everything you need to know in order to get started with ZBrush. But while a lot of the depth is nice, it is a bit superfluous.
People are asking why ZBrush is better than Blender when it comes to sculpting. Yeah,
so why is ZBrush better than Blender at sculpting? One of the reasons is because it's a dedicated tool to sculpting, and while Blender is not a dedicated tool. And Blender has only really got better, really, in the last year. Before that, it's been very rough. And ZBrush is just mature in that sense. All the tools have been refined and have been tested properly. While in Blender, they're still very, very much coming out. So they just haven't been refined as much. Plus, Blender is not a sculpting software. It's an everything software. It can do all the things, which means that it just won't have as much dedication to the general workflow as something like ZBrush will. There's just no way. ZBrush can do really a few things, and it does it really well. But Blender can do way, way more than ZBrush, and Blender will do way more things, and will do it to, well, it's just a little broader. Will you be adding hooves? No, I will not. I have already given him feet. This guy has human feet. That is my version of a Minotaur.
Disgrace.
Disgrace. Though I did find references of statues from ancient Greece, which very much show the Minotaur as a man with a human, with the head of a bull. So I think, your people did a good job there, Alpida.
Thank you.
You want to be a bit careful with only using this anatomy model as well, because this is such a generic model that you're not going to get the life from, you're not going to get all the life from real life models into it, just because it is a extremely generic model. You want to use real world reference as well, but it's really handy to use something like this just to block down the main muscles. Is this for a project or just for this tutorial? Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of doodling around. I'm not really doing anything more serious with this. Maybe I'll turn this into a longer tutorial, who knows? But at this point, this guy's purely for the stream, and also for the Sculpting challenge. If anyone wants to join that challenge, that's actually something that Elpida here has been spearheading for us. The last week's theme is ancient, so I interpret that as like ancient, some kind of ancient mythology or some kind of ancient creature, and that's why I made a Minotaur. So the price for that is basically any one of the free exclusive FlippedNormals products, excluding bundles. And so pretty cool prices. You can check that out on our social media as well. So you can just go to our Instagram or Facebook and Twitter, and you can find all the rules for that. Or you can go to our Discord server, to our official challenges one, and go there.
Also, if you just look for the hashtag Sculpt November, you should be able to see previous winners, all the submissions and so on.
Yeah.
Anywhere online, really.
I'm just like paraphrasing here, but your question about any tips for beginners in terms of maintaining proportion. Yes, use reference for it. Straight up overlay your reference over your models. Like what you can do, you can straight up just take ZBrush and just like use the see-through on top here, and then you can. For instance, if you want to match it up to, like, I don't know, this guy here, like this, you can do this, and you can straight up like match it over, like so, and you can now just start to align things. So that's a really good idea in order to keep proportions. Honestly, when I'm sculpting, I don't necessarily have a crazy intuitive understanding of proportions. Proportions are always hard, but by using images and actually lining stuff up, your life becomes an infinite amount easier. And then you have a system as well, because then it's not just like your word versus somebody else's word and preference. Then you have like a true guide. Is this right or is this wrong? Yeah, the tool we're using here is called Pure Ref, like somebody just linked in or just somebody wrote that in the chat. So don't go too crazy when it comes to anatomy, in the sense that be aware that you have to add skin and fat on top as well. It's a good idea to refine the muscles, but you have to blend them in. You have to balance them out. If you don't balance them out, then you are in a world of pain. It's just going to look like an anatomy model, which you aren't making. You're making like the anatomy isn't the final goal. Anatomy is a tool to tell a story. It's a tool to make something feel credible. Your goal is to make credible characters.
There's a nice question by Lucky Box, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I know this might be a big question. How can you stay motivated when failing or doing bad sculpts?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you stay motivated when you're doing bad sculpts? I find it helpful to, if you are doing a series of really bad sculpts, to figure out why your sculpts are bad. It can be a case of the fact that you just got a lot better at perceiving your own mistakes. So now you feel that your sculpts got a lot worse, when in reality your sculpts are at the same level. It's just that your perception has got better. If that's not the case, and you are just producing a lot of bad sculpts, analyze them. Do nice postmortems. Figure out why your sculpts are bad. Try to go into every single area of it. Don't just go, the sculpt is bad. But look into things like, are the proportions correct? Is the anatomy there? Really analyze the different areas of your sculpt. One of them can be you methodically go through all the points, such as, first, is the skeleton in the correct spot? If yes, Are the muscles in the correct spot? If yes, does it have fat and skin? And then you're just figuring out where the problems are with your model, because most of your problems are probably going to be because of those. Like somebody mentioned proportion before. Well, issues with proportion they're not just like issues with proportion. Issues with proportion will probably come from the skeleton, that the shapes are just or the skeleton is just in the wrong spot. So now I'll try to tackle the forearm. The forearm is an interesting one. I'm just going to move this guy a little bit back so I can see a bit better what I'm doing.
Anatomical models from the Lightbox, right?
Yeah, Lightbox and Tool and Ryan Kingsland.
Just spell his name.
Yeah, just Ryan Kingsland. Yeah, close enough. Yeah, there is only one Ryan there anyway, so it doesn't. What you can also do when it comes to motivation is instead of doing bigger projects, it's just purely doing quantity. Just start to produce more work and put timers on it. Because if you do bigger projects and you're trying to do like these big masterpieces and you're early on in your career, it's hard to do. You just have to do a lot of work in order to get good enough. But if you start to do a lot more smaller pieces, that means you're going to get your iteration time for learning really, really down, meaning you're going to produce a lot more and learn a lot from each piece. You learn a lot more if you do 30 1-hour sculpts than by doing 1 30-hour sculpts, at least if you're fresh, because they're like later on there's of course an argument to doing more serious ones, but if you're early on, you really, really want to make sure that you do a lot of different sculpts and different styles and different pieces of the body. That also means that you're not afraid of failing. If one of those sculpts screws up like crazy, all right, no big deal, because you just wasted an hour now, or you didn't necessarily waste it, but you produced something which wasn't nice for an hour, and maybe that teaches you something very important. But if you were to screw up something which you would spend 30 hours on, you're gonna feel like crap for like a week afterwards. So get your iteration times down. I do set up the workspace to do work like this, transform and split screen, set to 1. Yeah, there are so many small little secrets in ZBrush which nobody really knows about, and you just accidentally stumble upon them. Is this possible in ZBrush Core? It's ZBrush Core. I actually have no idea. I never actually used ZBrush Core. I always had the full version of ZBrush by the time Core came out, so I really don't know a whole lot about Core, to be honest. And here it's getting a bit muddy on the back, so there are a bit too many brush strokes, and this is where it's very easy for you to get lost in the brush strokes. So I am going in and I'm simplifying the shapes down a little bit, like so. just simplifying the skeletal structure and simplifying the muscle structure. I'm pretty sure we talked about this, the ZBrush split thing on YouTube before as well. Can ZBrush be used for only character sculpting or for environments as well? Well, I would say if you're doing environments, ZBrush is pretty much a must-have, unless you're doing maybe exclusively hard surface environments. If you're doing any like more organic environments with rocky terrains or something like that, I highly recommend ZBrush. ZBrush isn't a character tool. It doesn't really have a lot of specific character art tools per se. It's mostly used for making organic models, and it just happens to be that a lot of organic modelers prefer to use ZBrush for that. Like the brushes I'm using now are not specifically made for characters. It's just a clay brush, which just happens to work well for characters. What is your point when you feel the model is finished? Well, there are a few criteria for that. First off, you have to think about the frequencies. So we're dealing with low frequency. I'm mostly dealing with a lot of low and mid frequency shapes for now. Mostly low. Low is the general shape of things. It's what you look at if you were to blur everything and take away all details. You're dealing with these big shapes. Then you have mid-frequency, which I really don't have a lot of. I have like a little bit here for the eyes and such, some of this, but like in general, it doesn't have a lot of mid-frequency yet. And then you have high frequency. High frequency are these tiny little things which breaks up the skin and just adds little imperfections to your model. Your model is, at least if you're going for realism, is done once you have all three of them in a refined sense. If you're going for something more stylized, you can skip a lot of the high frequency, but you want to make sure that your shapes are nice and refined. This model here is nowhere near ready because I'm still working on the primary shapes. And if you rush the primary shapes, you are in a lot of trouble, just pure modeling, because you really, really, really require clean shapes to make really anything. If you're gonna put clothing on this guy and you don't have good clean shapes where his skeleton is, you're not going to be able to really put the clothing on in an accurate sense. It's like trying to imagine a store putting clothing on an ugly mannequin. Like it just wouldn't work properly. You just need all the landmarks. Yeah, we're probably going to do more live streams like this as well. I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun. I would love Morten to join as well at some point. Maybe he's already watching. Who knows what Morten is doing? I'm also kind of thinking about the general appeal of the model now. I'm trying to make shapes work with each other. I'm trying to make this flow into this and this flow into that. This is really hard to do, and that's something I'm going to continuously working on throughout this stream and the next stream and the one after that as well, just because appeal is a really, really hard thing to get right. We have a whole video on that on YouTube, which came out not too long ago. We also talk a lot about that in Introduction to Sculpting, which we have somewhere down here. Introduction to Sculpting, that's also on sale now, 50% off during the sale. And that covers everything I'm talking about now, like how do you sculpt something like this start to finish, and how do you really get into appeal. It's too big of a topic to get too deep into now, but once you understand appeal, everything becomes so much easier. You don't really get to a level though where you're just like, okay, I get appeal now I totally get it. But it becomes something that it's a concept you get used to, and your stuff gradually gets more appealing the more concepts you become aware of. But at no point do you just go, yep, appeal, I got it. That thing has been solved for me. How many hours do you typically spend on a sculpt like this? Yeah, that depends. That's a good question. For something like this, maybe if I were to take this to a final level, maybe 60 hours. For a more concept sculpt, I would probably spend like a day or two on this. Like if I was doing this for a game and this was a concept, wouldn't have taken him this far at this point, because he's already displaying the proportions and the character and everything. I need to refine a lot of things here, but the idea still reads. If somebody's like, if somebody's reviewing it and they're looking at it and they're like, nah, he's too beefy, he's too buff, I don't want him to be this strong. It doesn't make sense to keep refining it. If they're thinking that, well, we want a skinny Minotaur instead of like a really beefy one, well, just show them like a 2-hour sculpt and get on with it. Because it's not that your work is bad, it's just that it's the wrong direction. And if that happens, you should never take it personally. Yes, sir, this is live. Yeah, it's funny. Morten was saying that when he's streaming, people think he is me, and when I am streaming, people think I am Morten. Doesn't seem to be. That seems to just be like a rule of our lives. Some people even think we're the same person. And remember to save. I'm just gonna save this as Minotaur 4. So somebody, you're asking which intro to ZBrush, intro to sculpting, which one is better for learning how to sculpt? Well, if you're interested in learning to sculpt and you know ZBrush, then intro to sculpting is better. If you don't know ZBrush, then intro to ZBrush is better. I recommend it in the order of first intro to ZBrush, because then you learn how to use the tool, and then second you do intro to sculpting, because then it's all gonna make sense to you. Then all the sculptural techniques are actually gonna work in your favor. While we do cover some sculpting techniques in intro to ZBrush, it would cover much more in intro to sculpting. Like that's essentially a software agnostic tutorial, which just focuses on sculpting techniques. There are some specifics in ZBrush there, like maybe how to get clean meshes using zero measure and such, but it really focuses on your way of thinking instead of what buttons to press. People are saying they haven't seen Morten and I in the same room together. Nobody's seen us in the same room together. Have you seen us in the same room together, Peter?
No, I never have. Don't you use a digidouble for the videos?
Yeah, we just have a green screen behind us. You can sometimes see the fringes around me, and Morten is just me in a hat. I just put on a wig and just put myself there.
That's why you're both ginger.
Yeah, just a ginger wig. Hey, how do you have two viewports? Well, we are using the magic of the split viewport. Transform, and we go to split screen and set this to 1 or 2.
You should add an image of QRF that says that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Yeah, this is something I use specifically if I'm doing studies and I have either a scan or I have an anatomy model like this. Then this becomes a lot easier. I find that for forearm, while you have to, of course, think about the anatomy and the shapes and everything, or the anatomy and the muscles, the main thing you have to get right is the overall shape. So many of the muscles are just fused together into a few simple shapes. So we're to the point where it's much more important to look at like a more human reference as more live reference instead of just anatomical models. Because very few people would have each strand like you do on the anatomical models. And it just confuses the viewer and it makes you have really weird arms on your models. Yeah, Morten is on our Discord. He's not a lot on our Discord. I'm mostly there, just saying hello and talking to people. It's a happy place.
It's because Morten doesn't exist.
He's just like he's just an AI. Unless he's watching, then he's very much real.
Does he know you're streaming?
Probably not.
Okay.
He would if he was following us on Twitter. Yeah, how do you move the pure window? Right mouse button and just drag it around. Is there a Discord? Yes, there is a Discord. If you go to FlippedNormals.com and then just another plug, Black Friday sale is going. Then we go to the right, and then we go to all the way you see the 3 dots, and then we have Discord right there.
Zachary is asking, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you, Zachary. I am doing fine. Gets dark in Denmark though a bit too quickly, which I would like to change, but turns out filing a partition for that doesn't really help a whole lot. How are you doing, Zachary? I'm often going over my model with the damn standard brush just with a very low intensity. And this is like one of the ultimate tools for refining shape, I find. Because it's so precise. It really allows me to go in and just add specific shapes like this. When you were starting out at Pila, what was hard about sculpting for you?
I mean, when I started out, I didn't know how to do 3D at all. So it was really, I mean, generally for me it was hard to just get used to the idea of my thing being in 3D space in a screen somehow. That was very, very tricky. But then I think it was more learn to work with bigger forms and then concentrate on details, because coming from drawing as well and wasn't the best drawing artist as well then, I concentrated too much on like details or almost like the outline like you do with drawing. So I had to learn how to look at the shape in 3D space, if that makes sense. And also I had no idea there were 3 levels of detail, like mid, high and low. I just did basically mid and no, I did just high frequency, which is a lot of pores, and then on a flat plane that was a face. So yeah, I think just generally getting used to the software and then learning that there's not just a sphere for a head and then pores on it, if that makes sense.
That's always a hard one.
Yeah.
And the reason you guys should all care about what Pila says is, well, one of many reasons. She was able to go from not knowing anything about 3D to working in full-on VFX just within 2 years of her starting 3D. So you know what you're talking about.
Well, thank you. Thank you for showing me off.
Tack. Somebody's asking, how do you move it around with a pen? Well, you map one of the buttons to the right mouse button. I have one map to the right mouse button and one to the middle mouse button.
I usually find useful the behind one to be the right mouse button. I don't know which one.
The one which is closest to the nib for me is the right mouse button.
Okay.
But for me, it doesn't really matter because, well, I had this set up forever. But like I had to work at a studio once where they switched around, and then I got used to that, and it was possible to work at home, so I had to switch around there as well.
Fair enough, yeah.
What's her name again? Her name is Elpida. Everyone should also follow her on Twitter. What is something you think about in terms of when you're doing this? One of the things I'm thinking about now, which I'm still working on, is how the shapes flow into each other. This is a case where you see how, I still have to work more on this, and this model is still a bit wobbly. This shape flows like this shape flows like that, this shape flows on top of it, this shape flows in here, this flows on top of it like so. These shapes flow into each other. That's what I'm really thinking about. I'm thinking about overlapping shapes. I'm thinking about how this flows in and how this is being picked up like so. On the legs, it might be a bit more prominent, even though it's crappy currently. But here is a very prominent flowy element. You have the hamstrings, which go down here, and they just kind of go in here-ish. At least that's my flow right now. Don't think about anatomy, just think about the flows. This flows down, and this keeps going under it. So it's like you have one shape, and this is just kind of picked up by another shape, which is then picked up by another shape, which would then be picked up by another. Because think about the same thing here as well. This goes here, this goes there, this flows down. Once you think about the flows, like internal flows, everything becomes a lot easier. This flows here, picked up here, picked up here. But that's something I'm still refining on this model, and it's hard to do. It's hard to get this level right. So that's something I've been working a lot more on this model. And this is where the flowy things, that's something which is, it's not like a part of the frequency per se. It's not high, mid, or low frequency. It's something different. It's where you focus on appeal. It's where you focus on the emotional quality of the model. And even if you're doing something like the Hulk or Angry Minotaur or anything, you still have to think about the gesture and flow. Every single model has gesture and flow, or it's not going to work. Hey, does FlippedNormals have something resources for Ziva? Yes, we do. We have, let's see, there's a bear model, which let's see if our search picks it up. Yeah, we have this one by Nicholas Morel. This is a really good one. It's not a tutorial, it's a model, and this is made for Ziva, which allows you to have it allows you to work with muscle sim and just test this right away. So if you're interested in Ziva, I highly recommend this guy here specifically. I'm sure we have some more projects as well, which allows you to test Ziva right away. Ziva is used a lot in VFX for stuff like muscle sim. Yeah, so the volumes of the obliques are tricky. So here we have the serratus muscles, and they go something like this. You can stylize those quite a lot. And then the obliques, they just kind of go a bit all over the place. Let me explain on this guy. So here you have the serratus muscles. Call that because it's like a serrating knife or serrating blade. It looks a bit like a blade. And then here you have the obliques. They go on top of it. Let's remove her boobs so it's a bit easier to see. The obliques go on top like so, and they flow into the serratus muscles. And then they go from here, and they go down, and they wrap over like so. Let's see if I can do a quick draw over like this. I have a new keyboard. I just screwed up. I just signed out. Shit. Did the stream go dead now? Okay, we're back. Okay, I accidentally clicked the wrong button. So yeah, you see this? You see the oblique muscle going down like so. But this is something, there is a crazy amount of individual variation when it comes to this. Don't just replicate what you're seeing. Look at reference and try to replicate a reference. And it's like specific reference. Don't just replicate an anatomical model. You will probably have real world reference which will contradict anatomical models. This is particularly crazy if you start looking at human skulls, where you're looking at skulls and you're like, there's no way this is a real person, and it's a totally real person. So be, particularly when you're doing anatomy, be very, very open-minded, because stuff there goes crazy. A lot of it is influenced by pure genetics. Like even if person will have 0 body fat and 100% muscle, they would still look very different person to person, just purely based on genetics. Yeah, sorry, I have a new keyboard and I accidentally pressed the wrong button. That happens. Will the Minotaur have any hair? I have not decided that yet. Sculpting hair is always a bit of pain in the ass, but sometimes I really enjoy sculpting hair, so it kind of depends what I feel like. Because the thing about sculpting hair, it's not always particularly hard. It's just a lot of work. So sometimes I just kind of enjoy it, just sitting down and just sculpting for a few hours and just kind of relaxing with that.
There is the creature kit that has some pretty nice hair brushes out there.
That's true.
Yeah. Like BDM brushes that you can use if you wanna not spend time sculpting hair.
Creature. It's a bit hard typing with my creature. There we go. It's okay. How much sculpting should I do before moving on to the realistic sculpting? Oh, stylized sculpting. They're two separate things. You can do creature, you can do stylized sculpting from day one and never do realistic sculpting. Here's a creature kit. This is really cool. It allows you to make this in like an hour. It's just like it has pre-made arms and noses and horns and everything. I haven't used it on this guy, but if I was doing this for like a real concept job, I would have used the creature kit like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey Henning, is ZBrush a viable way of creating realistic hair, or are there better programs for that? If you want to make realistic hair, probably the best bet right now would be XGen in Maya. What you can do, if this is what I sometimes do when I want your best results, I block it out in ZBrush, and then I kind of almost like retopologize with curves in Maya, and then from there I take those curves into guides in XGen. And then you have the best of both worlds, because then you don't have to groom it or style it directly in XGen, because that can be a bit painful sometimes, because you need so many curves. So it can be a really good idea to do it first in ZBrush, because then it's kind of like concept sculpting, and then you retopologize it.
Can I say for hair, Houdini is getting pretty good as well now. I know that.
Houdini is great for that.
I know that Frame Store advertising using Houdini right now actually for that.
Cool.
Is that pretty cool?
XGen can also be painful. We also have a cool XGen tutorial coming out though in a little bit, which covers a lot of how to use it. It's made by a professional groomer at NPC who's been doing a lot of that before, so you'll be in safe hands. For hair for games, this is where I'm not entirely sure exactly how to do it, but I believe a lot of it is done using XGen, and then you convert from planes to planes from there. But I don't want to talk too much about games because I haven't done games. I can talk quite a lot about film, but games is I'm a little bit hesitant to talk too much about that. Here you can also see that comparing the human model to this one. Check out the traps. Just how massive they are on my guy and how tiny they are in her. That's also where you just have to stylize it. I'm just gonna save because I feel that ZBrush might be a little crashy now. I don't trust it right now. Just a gut feeling I have. Hey Mandarin. I hope you're safe in France. So now I'll focus a bit more on the legs because they're still a bit rough. What you can do is you can make polygroups for different areas. So I'm gonna just make some quick polygroups for the arms like this. Control W to create polygroups. That means you can hide the arms. I always hide the arms when doing the legs, because if you try to sculpt the legs like this, you can't see what's going on. So just hide the arms, and then from there on we can look at what's going on. Same with this guy actually as well. Let's do the same here. Let's hide the arms. We just have to hide one, that's okay. And then we'll switch back to this guy, and then we can more accurately see what's going on. You want to be careful when it comes to muscles as well, that not everything is flexed at any one point. That's a pretty big beginner mistake, that every muscle is firing at once. In reality, muscles don't really fire at once. Like, you're not going to have a tricep and bicep flexed at the same time just because, well, you can't, because they're opposite muscles.
Do you want to explain that one a bit more?
Yeah, so if you want to, for instance, let's look at the arm. If you want to move this arm forward, I'm going to be careful now, so I not log off. Let's try this one. Yay! That's the right key. Okay, so I think people can see this now. So if you want to take this arm and move this over like so, that means you're going to have essentially a rope from somewhere up here to somewhere down here. And that rope is going to have to get shorter. That's the bicep. Easy peasy. Just a stick with a rope, and this rope gets shorter. If you want it to go the other way, if you want the arm to go out like this, you want it to be straight, you need a rope from here to here. I just chose the exact same color, that was terrible. So you need to have a rope from around here to around there. And then you do that. And now we get two muscles. Now we get the tricep, which is here, and we get the bicep, which is here. And that's how you have two opposing muscles. Muscles a lot of times comes with opposing muscles. For instance, you want to get your, another one, I'll try to not log off now as well. Let's do this. You want the arm to go from here to here. Well, what you do, you then take a little rope from around here to around there, and this rope gets shorter. That's why you have the delt. This delt. Any tips on staying focused and motivated? Yeah, I do. This is something I was talking a bit about earlier in our stream. I specifically prefer the way of working, which involves doing shorter projects. If you want to get better at sculpting, do quicker studies. If you want to get better at a specific thing, for instance texturing, do quicker texturing studies. If you want to get better at taking a thing from start to finish, meaning you want to go through all the different stages, make mini projects. Spend maybe 10 hours, 15 hours, maybe a few days on it, and then just go through it and just try to get to the end result really fast. And then once you understand the process a bit better, then you can start to improve the process. Then you can start to go into every single area. It's very hard, particularly in the beginning for me when learning something, to immerse myself too much into that one thing. If you're new to 3D, for instance, and you were to be asked to spend 2 months on a single project, that would be so hard, because by the end you're so much better than you were at the beginning, and you learn so much by doing projects. So you might as well just get that learning early on. If you're doing this, I know I keep using figure sculpting a lot because that's what I'm focusing a lot on, but if you're doing figure sculpting studies and they're your first ones, you will learn something from every single one of them, and really critical beginner things. So if you want to if you have issues with your sculpting, you want to learn those after 10 minutes, not after 30 hours, because that learning is still going to be there after 30 hours. So you might as well just get those in 10 minutes and keep doing them.
Another thing, I think, what helped me, if you don't feel motivated to sculpt, just tell yourself, I'll just do it for 10 minutes.
That helps you.
And a lot of the times, once you're started, you're gonna end up sculpting more anyway, because you're already broken through that part of yourself that just doesn't want to start. That makes sense.
Yeah, just 10 minutes. That helps me a lot as well. And 2 hours later.
Yeah, you're sculpting for 2 hours. Yeah.
But also when it comes to that, there is a difference between motivation and discipline. You want to not rely too much on motivation, because motivation is short-sighted. That is when you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. and you're like, I'm going to improve my life right now. And then you wake up and you're like, nah, I'm okay. My life is fine the way it is. Like you're thinking there at 2 a.m., I'm going to go to the gym. And then you wake up and you're like, no, I'm okay. I'm not going to go to the gym. But determination and discipline doesn't take that into account. You just go. If you're like, oh, you don't feel like going to the gym, it doesn't matter. You just do it anyway. And then if you do it for enough time, this just becomes habit to the point that you don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about brushing my teeth in the evening. I just do it. It's just a habit at this point. If you can develop good habits like this, it's really, really helpful. There is a book I really recommend by a guy called, I believe his name is James Clear, I think. It's called Atomic Habits and focuses a lot on this. How do you build proper habits, which then can lead to long-term success? While it is useful to have motivational strategies to get you a kick in the butt, I find it far more helpful to have long-term habits which work for success. Like, that is not like a sexy solution. That's not like a, oh cheers, I just need long-term habits. But that's what I feel helps me, at least. Instead of these short, intense bursts, it's just keep getting a little bit closer every day. Yeah. Wow, that hurt. I'm sorry. How important is scripting for a 3D artist? Depends entirely what you're doing. If you're a rigger, scripting is practically essential. If you don't know scripting as a rigger, you're gonna have a very hard time. If you're an effects artist, it's gonna be very handy. If you're a comper, it's gonna be handy. If you're a general 3D modeler, it's gonna help you. But that depends on what kind of 3D modeling you do. I always wanted to learn scripting, but the work I was doing didn't really reward me for it. Like, in terms of, not like I got a promotion or anything, but there just wasn't a whole lot of point in doing it, in the sense that I was using ZBrush, and ZBrush really isn't great for scripting. ZBrush is great for all sorts of things, but it doesn't really have a strong scripting language like Python or Mel, or, well, Mel is only Maya. But so there wasn't really a whole lot of point in me learning it. But as a general tip, I recommend learning scripting. But little caveat for that, scripting just speeds up your work. If you're a crappy rigger, knowing scripting is probably just going to make you a crappy rigger faster. You still have to understand the fundamentals of what's going on so that you can do something faster. So first become a solid artist, and then you can start to learn scripting. Or you can learn a little bit of scripting as you go along as well. But scripting doesn't replace good 3D fundamental skills. It just makes you faster at it. Well, so which also does make you more valuable as a professional, for sure. Hey, thanks VFX expert. What's your favorite thing to do in terms of escapism? Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, right now the problem is, sitting during essentially quarantine at this point. In Denmark, it's not as strict lockdown as somewhere else, but it's sure as hell not like just go out and party all day long. So you're spending a lot of time indoor, and we have a company to run, so a lot of time is spent on that. I do enjoy playing Hades a lot now.
Hades is great.
It is great, and if I could snatch a PlayStation 5 out of some kids' hands, that would be great as well.
If anybody wants to donate that, we accept that for sure.
Yeah, we accept donations of PlayStation 5s. We're open for that. We can give you like a free FlippedNormals product or something for a PlayStation 5. Yeah, James is saying that scripting is probably better for environment building. It'll generate lots of different things. It can also be great for general production modeling. It's a tricky one, like when it comes to general production modeling, because it's not like you have a specific goal in mind. You want to create like a zipper, or you want to create different things. It's more like it's a general tool which allows you to succeed in production, because there's so many things you need scripting for. For instance, one thing we needed for, I think, was Pacific Rim, was we needed to move all the UV maps from map 1 to map 2, or you copy the UV map from map 1 to map 2 and then unfold it or something. And if you have like 600 pieces, that becomes very time consuming. But with some quick Python, you can quite accurately do that. But yeah, for characters, scripting isn't that useful, because there's so much bespoke work, so much work where you're just working on very specific things. And then, yeah, that can just be a bit hard to find a need for that. Hey, thank you, Ben. I really appreciate that. Good luck in Montana. I hope everything is good there. Montana is a place I've always wanted to visit. It looks really beautiful. Even from somebody from Norway who's experienced his fair share of mountains, I'd love to go hiking in Montana. Has Morten done games? No, Morten has not worked in games. Morten and I have pretty similar experiences. Morten has done a little bit more commercial work than I have. But apart from that, he's not worked in games.
By commercial, you mean advertisements?
Right? Yeah, I mean that's straight up advertisement. I don't mean paid work. I just mean he worked at the mill.
Yeah.
Is it super important for concept artists to learn retopology? It's not at all important for concept artists to learn retopology. Topology in general is often misunderstood. Topology is a tool which is used in production for various things. In terms of retopology or proper topology, that is most likely used to create good deformation and easy to use meshes. As a concept artist, you are not there to provide good deformation or easy to use meshes. You're there to provide good ideas and good shapes for characters if needed. So what's useful for a concept artist in terms of topology, it would be to understand how do you zero measure. Basically click the button, maybe project some things, but I mean a concept artist doesn't really need to use 3D. They might survive just from using pen and paper even. So topology is often overhyped as a really important skill because while it is for modelers, you have to understand the purpose of topology. Like topology for games and film is quite different because you're optimizing for different things. That's a general interesting discussion actually, which is for games, you're optimizing for efficiency. You're optimizing for being able to run this really, really fast on a computer with not necessarily that high specs. Well, for film, what you're optimizing for is, does this look as good as humanly possible? Can you fool millions of years of evolution into tricking that what you're looking at is actually real? So you work in a very different sense when it comes to topology for the different areas. And for UVs and shading and everything, in film you don't care if it's fast necessarily. You care if it looks really good, and then you optimize accordingly. Just gonna make this guy's butt a little fatter because he is getting a little bit too defined, and I just want to make his butt a little fatter.
Is he a thick boy?
He's a pretty beefy boy at least. What's your fastest time through Hades so far? I think I'm down to 25 minutes or something. Not crazy fast, but I checked yesterday and I have 126 runs so far just on the Switch. And I have probably around 50, I don't know, something like that on PC. Would you recommend the One Film Anatomy course on your store? Yes, I would. That's by Victory 3D. Victory 3D does a lot of really cool stuff, and they have a really nice anatomy course. Let's see if we can find that one. This one here. This is a nice course. It covers a lot of different things, 21 hours long. This is also on offer right now. It covers a lot of different things like this. It goes through different muscles, and it's generally pretty solid. It focuses a bit on 3D and a bit on 2D, and just generally on anatomy. Will you be getting Cyberpunk 2077? Maybe. Maybe. I can't really, like, don't hate me for this, but I can't really get through Witcher 3 because it's so massive. So it might be a case where in like 2025 I'll finally have time to sit down with Cyberpunk after some DLC is out and all that, and one Christmas just power through it. But let's see.
I want it if that helps.
Okay, Alpida wants it. Maybe if somebody, again, graciously wants to donate their PS5, then we could do that. One thing though I am looking forward to is hopefully at some point in the future there will be some more Switch games out, because it seems like that has kind of dried out. I just want to play some more Mario and some more Zelda. How do you feedback your own studies? That is a great question. I'm pretty sure we've done videos on this recently as well on exactly that. Like we have 2 videos which came out recently. This year has been a mess, who knows. We made 2 videos which came out in the spring, I believe, which focuses, one is how to give feedback and one is how to receive feedback. And one of the things we focus on is You can 100% give yourself feedback. You just have to know how. And one of the ways is, if you're doing studies, this is not a study what I'm doing now. A study would be try to replicate this. And then what you do feedback on is, again, I'll try to draw on top without logging out this time. What your feedback in this case would be like, okay, let's look at the shape of the muscle. Let's take this into Photoshop and just really go over the shape. Then we can start to analyze what's going on. And if the shape is right, good. If the shape is different, not good. And then you feedback that. This is why it's really, really essential that when you are doing studies, at least early on, that you're using really accurate reference. If you're using reference which is blurry and you don't have all the angles and all that, it becomes really tricky to do studies, because you can definitely do some sculpts, but because it's so hard to give you feedback. If the more things are ambiguous, the harder it is to study, the harder it is to give feedback. Is there a specific way to name things like lights for an industrial pipeline? Yes, there is, and it depends on each pipeline. For something like film, you don't really use Maya for that. When it comes to lighting, I can explain some of the pipeline there. A bigger question there. The way you do it for like maybe quick commercials and your student films and all that is you keep everything in Maya. You model in Maya, you UV map, you bring in textures from Painter. And then you rig and you animate and you light and everything there. But that's not working for film. It's just far too convoluted and it's too messy. You don't have enough control and it doesn't scale with a lot of artists. So what you're doing is, after your model have been animated and your scenes have been animated, you might export them out in a format like Alembic. And then you can bring this Alembic file into other specialized lighting software like Katana. Katana is awesome. Katana is spelled like the katana, like the Japanese swords. And this allows you to bring it in a node-based session or node-based fashion. And it's similar to Nuke in that sense, where you have a camera node and you have a light node and you have a model node. And then you can bring it in. And if you want to replace the lighting, you can drag in another light rig. And you're very flexible in that sense. So your question, how do you name your lights, isn't just like, oh, just add an underscore LHT to it. Because in film, you don't do it like that. You will be working most likely in a node-based fashion. Or if you're Dina, you'll be working in a crazy Clarice sort of fashion, which is just a weird software. But in general, for your models, you'll be adding underscore something like geo or mesh. It doesn't really matter what you're adding. It could be underscore like banana or anything, as long as it's consistent. Because that means that you can now just sort by your models. It means everything will now, if you type underscore geo, all your models will just appear right away. But whatever your convention is, the most important thing is to keep it consistent. Are skeletons sometimes needed, even if not seen? For example, in muscle rigs. Yes, absolutely. You will put a skeleton inside it, and then you will simulate that. It's all baked into it, but yeah, you'll do that. Do you have any recommendations where to find good reference? Yes, we do. Actually, on FlippedNormals, let's see if the search works now. We have reference. We have a lot of really cool reference packs. There are a bunch of really nice ones. Don't think I should go too much into this one because there's too much nudity for YouTube here. But here is one which doesn't have a lot of nudity, I think. So this is here's a pack which has a lot of really nice reference for a male warrior. We have a lot of reference packs for environments. So the cool thing about these reference packs is they're very specific, and it's like one person who's just been going around and shooting a lot of reference packs like this. So we have a bunch of those here, and they're quite cheap.
Otherwise, I guess you just Google things. Yeah. Yeah,
Google things, Google specific things. For instance, for the Intro to Sculpting project, where I was sculpting the dwarf. Like a specific tip there. It sounds simple, but I see that people aren't really doing it. Instead of Googling dwarf and seeing what you find, you get a lot of weird results that way, trust me. But what you want to do is you want to search Gimli, for instance. You don't necessarily just want to go dwarf. The reason is because it's too generic. You want to be specific in your searches. That's going to help you so much more. Instead of searching for airplane, find the airplane model you want to replicate and model that. There's an anatomy course by Nicolay for female anatomy on the website, and I'm unsure about the quality of that course. So I don't know about that specific course, but Nicolay in general is absolutely phenomenal. His work is just great, and he's one of the most highly rated instructors and teachers we have on FlippedNormals. So without knowing this specific one, like, I don't want to recommend things I haven't seen myself. I can highly recommend Nicolay as a general teacher, and I would trust anything that he has put his hands on. His stuff is very practical. He's very good at quickly getting to the point without wasting anyone's time. So he's just phenomenal. Is the work on film a fast-paced environment? No. Work on film is a very, very slow-paced environment. And it can feel high-paced at some points, but in general, you have so much time to do things. Like, each specific thing might feel a bit rushed sometimes, but something, for instance, for like Pacific Rim, Morten and I worked on that movie for almost a whole year. So we did like one character each. So you feel that often you don't have enough time to do what you want to do, and yet at the same time, you've been working on the same thing for like 8 months. So compared to something like advertisement, you have so much time in film. Would you model clothing on your model? No, probably not. I'm going to be doing this purely as a sculptural piece. But if I were to, it would just be like a quick line cloth or something, just something simple in Marvelous Designer.
I think Ben is asking how would you do it?
Oh, how would you do it? If you want to do that, you would. And Peter is actually working on a series not right now, Introduction to Marvelous Designer. So that's a question for you, Peter. How would you model clothing on this guy here?
I mean, it really depends what you want to do. If you want to have something that doesn't look very realistic, you just want some quick cloth on there, you can just sculpt it, I guess. But if you want something that looks fairly realistic, I would look into Marvelous Designer. It's very good software for blocking out quick clothes, and if you don't want to finish them there, you can always bring them back into ZBrush and change them to look exactly like you would like them to look like. But yeah, Marvelous Designer is a good software to look for clothes. You want to check that out?
Yeah, I highly recommend Marvelous. Marvelous is the industry standard for making clothing.
Yeah.
All VFX game studios in the world which does anything remotely realistic would be using Marvelous day in and day out.
Yeah, the thing is, it solves a lot of the problems for you. It solves because it simulates. It makes the clothes look like clothes, while cloth is very hard to sculpt.
I find that there is some controversy about this. Should you learn how to sculpt cloth or not? And my thinking is that I really don't think it's necessary to learn it. Maybe do like a study or two or something. But for a production artist, you will just use Marvelous Designer for clothing. So just embrace that and get good at Marvelous. It's not cheating at all. You use very different fundamentals. When you're doing Marvelous, you're not just clicking like make clothing button or something. What you're doing is you need an understanding of how like tailoring and seamstressy work. You become essentially a digital tailor instead. It was a very different way of working.
Like Matt says, it's nice to know how it behaves, but yeah, how cloth behaves. Yeah,
have a general sense of how cloth works, but like you don't have to do like a 100-hour study on or anything like that. It's much more valuable to spend that time learning how Marvelous works, I think. Plus, if you know Marvelous really well, studios really would like to have a chat with you.
Thomas is asking about the fast pace that you talked about earlier. He says, does it depend on the studio? Some friends at Rodeo had a lot of crunch time.
Yes, you can have a lot of crunch time, and I'm sure it of course it varies as well. But it just like in general, the pace is lower than something like commercial. Like, I'm not saying that it's going to be super relaxing always, and sometimes you just have a crazy amount of shots to go through. And it's not necessarily, it's not like relaxing. It's just it can be high pace for sure, but it means you're usually spending a lot more time per shot, per asset, than you are in other fields where you might do like 2 props a day. Maybe now you're spending like a week on the prop just because it's such a hero thing, which is going to be right in front of everything. So yeah, it's not like it's easy, but the pace is quite a lot lower just because of the quality which is expected. I would say Marvelous Designer is more comfortable to use than a new cloth feature in ZBrush. Answer for you, Olivia?
I mean, I haven't used a cloth feature in ZBrush too much, but I personally think that it is. I think to get into Marvelous, you really, it's not really hard to get into. There's only a few clicks, and once you know how to do that, it's mostly about patterning. Well, I didn't like how the cloth in ZBrush reacted very much. I think it was a bit buggy still. Maybe in the future, but
yeah, maybe.
Right now, I think Marvelous is better for cloth than ZBrush is right now.
It's kind of like Marvelous is to ZBrush as Blender is to, or ZBrush is to Blender in terms of that, in terms of sculpting versus cloth.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how in ZBrush, I haven't used, as I said, that tool much, but I know that in Marvelous you can make patterns and move them around. How does it work? Can't
do that in ZBrush. Yeah. You basically just kind of model the shape and just use it. It might be good if you need like a quick tablecloth or just some undulation, but it's not a replacement. It was never meant as a replacement. Who knows what it was meant for? But yeah. Would you recommend the XP Pen 22E Pro for ZBrush? I haven't used the XP Pen. I'm using Huion right now, which is pretty good. Only complaint I have so far with that is that I have to reboot my computer a fair bit. Sometimes if I leave it overnight, like between the streams I had 2 days ago and today, I had to reboot it because it just kind of stopped working, and I have the weirdest pen pressure issues. Apart from that, it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I haven't used an XPS. Why did you leave your career in VFX, Henning? Did you get everything out of what you wanted and then decided to make kick-ass content for all of us? I mean, kinda. I mean, one of the reasons was because Morten and I have been working on FlippedNormals since like 2013. It was really cool in VFX, and I still liked the job there. It was really cool. The last thing I worked on was Venom, which was awesome. Before that, it was Pacific Rim, and Morten worked on Harry Potter as the last thing there, which is awesome. But it became more about, we felt that we could have a bigger impact on the world this way. Felt we had a lot of stuff to teach, and we felt that we could have a bigger impact through FlippedNormals than we could in film. So we had this actually been asked. This has actually been asked a lot. Like, did you leave because there was anything bad in the industry? But we didn't leave because of that. We left because we wanted to do something else, and we really want to do that for a long time. I have not tried resetting the software drivers, Matt. I just brute force to reboot the PC. Yeah, the 22 Plus is great. That's what both Morten and I have. It works really well. It's not that expensive. It's significantly cheaper than a Cintiq, though I haven't used that too much. I like that FlippedNormals help to lower the barrier of entry for this type of art. Thank you. Again, this that's kind of what our goal is. Like, if we can just help a little bit, then we are very, very happy. It's a tricky industry, bunch of technical things, a lot of hard fundamentals to understand. So if we can just give people a little push and just help you with some of the harder things, and that helps you maybe get a job or enjoy your hobby a bit more, or maybe you realize that you went from you're sitting in your bedroom as a teenager and you're not sure if you can even do this as a job, if this is even a viable career, and your parents are beating down your door telling you to get a real job, you hippie, then, you know, if we can just give you a little push in that direction, then amazing. If not, just enjoy our crappy jokes on YouTube. How did you begin your modeling career? That's a great question, and Morten and I actually have a really long video on that on YouTube, which is not that old. It covers basically how we get started, but like in short, I started my career just as a CG artist professionally 2009. I started at a local studio in Bergen in Norway, where I was an intern. Then I got let go because of the financial crisis actually started hitting us a bit later. And then I went to school in Denmark, met Morten. A few years later, 2014, I went to London, got a job at Framestore, or rather got a job at Framestore as an intern first, and then moved to London. After that, at that point, I was doing mostly props for Paddington, which was awesome, crazy movie, very sweet one as well. And then I started went to NPC, was hired as a modeler. Somehow convinced them I was a texture artist, so then I did texture for some time. I did a lot of sculpting. I got more into more concept sculpting, kind of what I was doing now, and a good healthy mix between character sculpting, retopology, and texturing as well. Then I went to DNEG, and then from there I was promoted to senior. And then there my second project was Pacific Rim, and I worked on kaijus for that. And that's kind of a little too long, didn't read off the video. Which school was that? That school is called the Animation Workshop. A really nice school. They've been doing some restructuring recently. They had new management. So I honestly can't say the level of the school currently, and Corona is probably changing a lot of things. But my experience was great. I've been back there to teach almost every single year since I graduated. This year is the only year I haven't been back. Really lovely place, really nice students. Highly recommend it in general. Will you ever, Adam asks, will you ever go back to VFX? Nope. There's probably not going back to VFX. Again, for reasons I listed before, not because it was a bad job at all. It was really fun, really enjoyed it, but I just think I can do a lot more with FlippedNormals. Will you ever be creating some asymmetry after you're happy with the base shape and then do texturing? I tend to do that, yes. I tend to add some asymmetry either before or after texturing. It doesn't matter a whole lot necessarily, because your model needs to work with some light deformation anyway. I definitely do my deformation after I've done UVs though, because that means my UVs will be perfectly symmetrical, and therefore I can then duplicate my textures from one side to another if I'm using Mari. So regardless of you doing texturing before and after, the biggest thing is do your UVs before any deformation. Unless your model is like crazy asymmetrical, like he's missing like a horn on one side or something.
Are you going to do that with a specific guy though?
No. Maybe something in the middle. Maybe just like, I would break up his abs because his abs are way too symmetrical and perfect right now. So I would do that. But in general, I wouldn't do too much on this guy.
Real abs are not symmetrical, are they?
Real abs are very, very asymmetrical.
Yeah.
It's crazy how asymmetrical they can be. Some people have a 7-pack, damn it. It's not even like 8 or 6, just like one in the middle.
Well, Henning has 12.
Of course, I actually have 18 packs. Do you think it would ever be possible to start animation companies that operates over the internet? I 100% think that's possible. You have to figure out how to start a pipeline which is fully decentralized. You'd also have to figure out some legal aspects as well. For most companies, that's not a huge thing if you're doing quick commercials or something. But if you're doing film, you will have to figure out that. How do you work with NDAs? Because if something gets leaked, you're in big trouble. So, but yeah, technically, you have to figure out the pipeline. You have to figure out how to work with your staff remote, but you should absolutely be able to. Do you have any opinion of Nomen? I'm probably going to get a certification there after I complete my bachelor's at my current college. Like, this is not like a specific thing about Nomen. Like, I've been checking out Nomen for a long time, and I was considering studying there as well. The problem with Nomen, something like CalArts and all these ones, is the common denominator is that they are really expensive. I'm not going to get into too crazy of a rant right now because I tend to do that, but you need to check out how much they are, because that can, just a certification or 1 year at a school like Nomen can put you in debt for a very, very long time. So if you can afford to, great. And by afford to, I don't mean you can get a student loan and get the money. I mean, you actually have a plan on how to pay it back, which doesn't involve getting a 6.5 figure salary straight out of school. So if you can afford to attend one of these schools, I'm sure they're great. But even if it takes you twice as long, it takes you a few years longer than like the 1 year of those schools, I really, really think it's worth to spend that self-studying, getting cheap tutorials online. I mean, if like one good tutorial online is like $100, then you can buy a lot of tutorials. You can even buy tutorials directly from Nomen. They have a lot of really high quality tutorials as well. What do you think about people doing 3D art for hobby compared to actual career? Well, it's awesome. That's, I mean, phenomenal. It's like, what do I think about people doing music as a career, or painting, or music as a hobby, painting as a hobby? You know, it's great. We tend to focus on it as a career because of that's where we come from, and that's where a lot of our students are trying to do. But if you want to do it as a hobby, phenomenal. I've seen some hobbyists which have been absolutely to a professional level, which is awesome to see. What do you think about the job situation in game art movies with the corona thing going on at the moment? I don't know too much about games, but in terms of movies, they are being hit badly to the point where there have been significant layoffs, and film is just inherently more exposed there than games, because in theory you could have a game studio which is fully remote and you work from home, and I'm sure most of them are by now. But in movies, you just need plates. You just need somebody to be on site and shoot. And the problem as well is, I can't even imagine the price of the insurance this company must have. Can you imagine how expensive it is to like insure Tom Cruise for Corona? Like, it must be terribly expensive. So they're just not shooting a whole lot right now. Plus, you need access to all sorts of different countries, and you have all the regulation, you have all the protection, plexiglass and everything. So it's really hard to shoot movies right now. There's a reason you haven't seen any new movies in the last 6 months, essentially. What are some artistic principles when it comes to polymodeling a prop? You want to be able to, when it comes to polymodeling a prop, that a lot of times that's purely reference based, which means that it's not so much purely artistic principles, it is a lot of follow the reference, but some artistic principles would be look at the main shapes, really break it down. Particularly for props, you should break down what materials things are and how you can break it down into something simple. If you're doing an engine, for instance, that might be really overwhelming, but if you break it down into each simple organic piece, or each simple separate piece, it might not be that tricky. Particularly when it comes to texturing as well, it just becomes a lot easier if you know what things are made out of, and you make like a little sheet for yourself. It just becomes a million times easier. What aliens did you sculpt for Alien Covenant? I'm a big Alien movie fan, so it's cool to hear you worked on that. Yeah, so that is a fun one. We I just want to preface this by saying that Alien was very much a collaborative project. Like, not a single person can take credit for any model on that entire film. But I was lucky enough to work on a few really cool models there. The first one I touched was the Neomorph. That had like 4 stages, like adults, I think it was. That was like the big version of the Neomorph. Then that was handed off to the intern, who is now very much not an intern anymore. His name is Antoine, fantastic artist, who completed that. Then I worked on the xenomorph. I did a lot of concept sculpting. Well, concept sculpting is production concept sculpting. And then I retopologized that as well. And that was the very, very last thing I worked on at NPC before I left. So I was just able to finish the concept sculpt before I left. But that was one of the coolest projects. Hey Neil, I think you are.
Hey, I think you're my lecturer from university.
Yeah, I think Opila is here. She's saying hello. If you are indeed the teacher.
If you're indeed the games lecturer in UH, hello.
Hello. Back to your question though. What is the future of Blender in your opinion? I think Blender has a really, really bright and awesome future. I think it's going to be starting to be used more and more and more. And I actually just been writing an article on this, why Blender is an industry standard. And because it's not right now, but in order to, there's going to be a second article, I think, how can Blender become an industry standard tool? And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of freelancers using it. And then there's going to be some new studios which are going to start, which are going to be using Blender. Like, it's not going to replace Maya in established pipelines. But what it can do is you can start a new studio with Blender, and then you're going to be developing tools for Blender, which means that now Blender is suddenly going to get a lot of very cool pipeline tools. And then you're going to be a new studio started, which is going to have an easier time, and they're going to develop tools, and it's going to be like a snowball effect to the point that Blender is going to be getting support and a lot of really cool tools for in the exact areas is missing. Like currently, if you want to use Blender in a production, that's going to be a bit painful just because you have to spend some time developing the tools. But once it's there, and it doesn't necessarily need that many tools, it just needs some focused work, then it will be really powerful. You're already seeing it's taking over a lot of Maya for a lot of freelancers. Like if you're a freelancer today doing particularly like modeling and texturing, I would have probably not been using Maya a whole lot. I would have been using Blender for most of my work, using something like Rism for UVs, Topogun for topology, and then just use Blender for it. It's really powerful. Like it's not about which tool is better than Maya or Blender. They're different tools, and what we are seeing though is Blender is being developed a lot more actively than Maya is being developed right now. You know, if I was at Autodesk seeing the development of Blender next to it, I wouldn't see it necessarily as an existential threat, because the big corporations are not going to just be switching it out overnight. But I would see it as a threat maybe over the next 10 years, at least to parts of my business. Hey, thank you, Tua. I really appreciate that. It's a very kind comment. All right, so here's like a too long didn't read of the Blender article of why it is an industry standard. There are a few parts to it. One of them is retraining. Let's say you have a whole team of artists. They all know Maya, and you want to crew up from next job. Let's say you need a lot of modelers, you need a lot of animators and riggers. Let's say, just for sake of argument, the Blender was just as good as Maya in all these areas. Then you would still need to crew up for that. Currently, there aren't that many Blender artists out there, which means that you will have to. You just won't find people for it. But if you're looking for like 10 Maya riggers, I mean, it's not going to be that hard to find 10 Maya riggers, 10 Maya animators, 10 Maya modelers. You're just going to be able to crew it up right away. So, and retraining your existing staff is expensive and time consuming, and just doesn't necessarily offer a whole lot of benefits in that sense. Like if Blender was objectively better, that would be a different thing. Like if it was to the point where you could measure that rendering was 3 times as fast and modeling was 2 times as fast, then you have an argument. But currently there isn't a lot of impetus behind that in the big studios for change. So retraining is a big one. Another one is that it's like, if it's not broke, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Currently Maya works for the big studios. And also for the big studios, they're using Maya for rigging, particularly for rigging and animation. And that's just not going away anytime soon. And they aren't even using Maya for rendering anymore. You know, they're using Katana and Clarice and Houdini for a lot of that. So it's not even competing for that. Like Blender is like, there's zero chance that it's taking over for lighting from Houdini and Katana. Like it's not even an argument there. So it's one of these that it's not necessarily fixing a problem, and you're not gonna spend a lot of time to replace it. An argument is that it's free, but it's not free, because yes, it's free to get a tool, of course it is, but you have to rebuild a significant amount of tools as well. If you're an established company, you have a lot of tools which you have spent a lot of time building. Some of them I'm sure are obsolete, but some of them are really essential to your business. So why would you rebuild those tools when you don't have to? Yeah, but what about Microsoft Paint? That's a fair question. It's not there yet. Yeah, Josh, I get you. XGen is broken like crazy. XGen is a frustrating little guy. I really wish XGen was, better. I think you can feel some animosity here. Theodore is asking, when you were working in the VFX industry, how often were you sculpting and what other tasks were you doing? I was kind of between 50% sculpting and 50% texturing actually. So I was spending half my time in ZBrush, half my time in Mari, and maybe some time in between in Maya. But I didn't really use Maya at Framestore or at MPC or DNEG a whole lot. What VFX secrets are we whispering, Henning? What VFX secrets was I whispering indeed?
The secret of secrets.
The secrets of secrets. I was just doing some silent ASMR. Blender is not industry secret, industry standard. Oh no, somebody's gonna use that clip of me on for the Discord server. Also, there is no Discord server.
No, there is.
What? There is no Discord server.
There is.
Can I learn art fundamentals like composition and color theory purely through 3D? Absolutely you can. Fundamentals aren't so much about which medium you're using, it's about doing exercises which helps you understand. If you want to understand composition, you don't have to bring out your gouache set and work on, and go out and go to the Hudson River and paint. You can also do exercises with like little primitives. You can build up a quick little scene, some quick lights, and you can do studies purely in 3D. When it comes to color, you can do the same thing. You can paint with different color maps, and you can just experiment with different color schemes. So you can 100% learn 3D fundamentals by doing only 3D. It might be faster in some cases to learn them through 2D, but it might also not be. 2D does not mean art fundamentals. 2D just means 2D. It's just another medium. The thing about 2D is you can't cheat as easily. In 3D, you don't have to understand perspective or color in order to use color. You just click the color. I am absolved of any nonsense that happens on Discord. Yes, I very much am.
No, that is an actual quote.
That is an absolute quote. Yeah. Connor is asking, hey, I worked in the games industry and I found myself fatigued after working in 3D all day and not in the mood for my own projects. How do you fight the fatigue? That is a very good question. I have issues with that myself. I honestly didn't really do a whole lot of personal projects after I started in VFX. What might help is doing small little projects. Instead of these huge projects, doing my own little things really helps. Like more speed sculpts and all that, a few hours here and there. It helps if you have like a time restriction on it. But yeah, it is just a hard thing. If you figure that one out, please let me know, because I would love to get more into 3D again, more as a hobby. But yeah, it's difficult when you work a whole day and 3D feels like work to go into Maya and ZBrush and do it again. What helps me as well is when I was in film, I was doing a lot of very technical things, like doing UVs and doing projection mapping, like all these kind of things, and you absolutely don't want to spend your spare time on that. But that's where ZBrush for me is just like escapism. You go in there, you just doodle around a little bit, you don't think necessarily too much about what you want to make, and you just have a good time. The moment it starts to get too technical, like get too pipeliney, then I have a bit of PTSD, because then it just feels very much like work, and then I can't rest. Hey, what do you think about practicing sculpting with clay next to sculpting ZBrush? I mean, you can. If you do proper studies there, I'm sure it can help your sculpting. It's not automatically going to help your sculpting, but I'm sure it's a good exercise. I haven't really done much sculpting in clay personally. I've basically only been a digital sculptor. I've basically only been a digital artist. But if you do proper studies in clay with like particular live model and such, I'm sure you get a better understanding of how it all works. But whatever works. I'm not going to discourage anyone, but I'm also not going to say that clay sculpture is essential at all, because it really isn't.
I gotta say though, it's not essential, but I did take a sculpting class with real clay, and in person it helped me so much with my digital sculpting. I just understood it more when I could hold it.
Yeah.
So it might be a nice idea to just try a class. But I don't know how much doing it yourself at home would help, to be honest.
Yeah, like it's not that it automatically makes you better, but it can help you. Sometimes you're at a stage where you just need like an epiphany, and maybe doing it with traditional clay is gonna give you that, but it's not like an automatic thing. Like I've just been doing sculpting and digitally for such a long time that I just have a more intuitive understanding of form, I suppose, right now. But if you don't have that, if you're new to sculpting in ZBrush, it might just be the push you need, that you've been trying ZBrush and now you try it with real clay, and now it just like clicks for you. Now I'm just adding some eyes to this guy. I'm always adding that to the left side, like screen left, character right side, because then you can use a feature, mirror and weld. And there it's gonna pop up. The reason that I use mirror and weld is, or I put on the left side, is because it always works from the left to the right side, like screen based if you're from front. And remember to put in your eyeballs, because if you don't put in your eyeballs, it's gonna be very hard to actually model the eyes. It's still so fresh, it's so rough for me here, and I just need a lot more polygons to make that work. But get in your eyeballs early on. Which aspect of art do you find most enjoyable and fulfilling? For me, that's sculpting. I just find that to be most enjoyable. I find it to be really relaxing sometimes. I don't find doing these kind of streams relaxing. I find it to be fun, but not relaxing, because I have to think a lot and have to design on the fly as well. But when I'm just sitting there sculpting by myself, I put up like some nice Pink Floyd music or something on my headphones, and I just go into the flow. That's very pleasant. I really enjoy that. Did you guys try the new Marmoset toolbag? No, but it looks awesome. It looks really cool. I've been using Marmoset a little bit recently. Still not an expert at all because I'm not really a games person, but the fact that it has ray tracing is a huge thing. It looks really cool. What are your and Morten's non-art related hobbies to unwind and relax? Well, Morten enjoys going to Sweden and chopping down trees in the middle of a forest. So that's a fun thing. I've been picking up the guitar a little bit recently, which I really want to get properly into. I've started reading again now. Bought a Kindle recently, which is really nice. When Corona is not here, I really enjoy going to the gym, but that's stopped a little bit now. I have a little outdoor gym, but yeah, still not the same. Is Sheridan a good school for learning 3D animation? I have no idea. Yeah, as a general thing before, like you're asking the right questions, as a general thing before you're picking a school, like research the crap out of it. Like find current students, ask them questions, don't let go until they answer your questions. Find past students who's finished it, very important, find past students. And then really get answers to your questions. And some of the questions should be, what is the school like? How do you get a job here? Do you recommend this school? Was it worth it? Yeah, Fritz, you should ask Morten about chopping wood. I'm sure he would love to talk about that. As a general note as well, when it comes to schools, it's a bit tricky this year because of Corona, but I would be, somebody who runs a digital marketplace focusing on animation or focusing on education. I'm a little bit shooting myself in the foot here, but you want to be a little bit careful with online schools. Not online learning per se. There can be a lot of fantastic ones like Animation Mentor. There are some iAnimate and some other ones which are really good. But you want to be careful with schools which are just slapped online learning on top as a band-aid. They've been to a traditional school for years and now they're just straight up just being like, yeah, now we're also online. That is a bit of a red flag for me because they haven't necessarily adapted to it. If you're doing online learning, you have to adapt to it. You have to build your entire core around it. Like what we're doing with our courses, for instance, some of the courses we have are much better than what you can get on online school, and I know that because in a traditional school, and I know that because I've been teaching at a traditional school, and I've had some of the same courses. So the courses I have online, like when I'm pre-recording it, are just so much better than what I'm doing in class. So that's one advantage of online learning. Disadvantage is that it might be live. If your lectures are live, then a lot of the purpose is gone. You want live feedback rounds, but you really don't want all lectures to be live. Stuff screws up. You have to do the same lecture over and over again. If they pre-record lectures, really perfect them, they can go over them multiple times, stuff doesn't crash, you're fine. I had a session a year ago now when I was teaching at the animation workshop where I was using V-Ray for displacement maps, and it just crashed. During rendering, it just crashed every single time. I worked the day before, just crashed. Nothing you can do about it. Lecture is broken. Luckily, I had it recorded on YouTube as well, so they can just go there. But like, those things happen during live lectures. That's just unfortunate. But that's the advantage with online learning. It doesn't ever happen, because if it happens, well, I'll just re-record it. I'll figure out what's wrong, and I can't do that when there are 30 students around. Yeah, some people work really well in physical environments. That's just the way it is as well. Pros and cons to online learning versus in person. Some people just learn a lot better in person. All right, just have to soften off some stuff here. It's really important when you're sculpting that stuff has generally the same sharpness levels. You don't want one area to be crazy sharp and other areas to be crazy soft. Like you can have areas with different detail level, but you want it to feel like one cohesive sculpture. You don't want like his belly button to be like mega sharp and his face to be very soft. You generally want to go over it and just make it feel like it's one character. Hey Omar. Did you ever look at another artist and think, damn, I'll never be able to do that? You know, the cool thing about that is that I've done that a lot of times, and the awesome thing is that you might see the same piece some years later and be like, I've done that, like at a much higher level, where what you're currently thinking is impossible to do might be very possible to do just like a year later. Your skills can improve dramatically fast if you're putting your mind to it, and it's one of the coolest things to kind of like when you're like work until your rivals, until your heroes become your rivals, kind of thing.
I think a fun thing when it comes to that, because I feel that all the time, and then I go to Henning and go, Henning, I'm not good enough, what do I do?
And I go, honey, you're fine.
The cool thing about that is that you can think what makes it better than you, and then you realize what you're lacking in. That's what Henning does. He's like, okay, tell me what is he doing that you can't do. And I'm like, okay. It's a very good way to learn instead of just beat yourself over it. Pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly, because it's very hard if you just feel discouraged. If you're just looking at somebody and be like, I can never in my life do this, that doesn't help you. But if you like, this is something my teacher Lawrence he was just like, what is hard about this piece? And you might be like, the anatomy is pretty hard, and then you look at the anatomy and be like, the anatomy here is fine. It's not anything crazy. It's fine. It's decent. And you're like, oh yeah, I suppose, yeah, I can see some mistakes here and there. All right, and then what about the idea? I mean, the idea is adequate. It uses a concept, you know, it's nothing that insane. But what about the topology? Yeah, you know, it's kind of has some hard things here, but it's kind of standard. So when you start to break it down like that, it becomes a lot easier instead of just going like, this is just out of my league. Because nothing is out of your league. Like, I firmly believe that basically every single person can really become an extremely high level CG artist. It just takes time.
I think I just want to say about Rodrigo gives a good point that in painting you do the opposite when it comes to the sharpness you talked earlier.
Yes.
That's actually interesting because in VFX, I guess, and with 3D, the softness pass happens when you render. That's when you do your focal points and your your depth of field. That's where you get the blur parts you would in painting, but in painting there's no automatic tool to do that for you, so you fake it while you draw. Yeah, that's kind of what you're talking about when it comes to, like I said, some areas shouldn't be sharper than others. The reason I'm saying it, some areas shouldn't be necessarily be sharper than others is because in 3D you have a camera to do that for you. You have like actual techniques to determine softness and sharpness, but you want your, like when you're doing a character, particularly for production, you want that character to work from all areas. There might be areas you want your viewers to look at more than others, but in general you want it to feel cohesive. Like maybe you want the face to be a focal point. You still want that to be maybe more detailed, but you don't want like this area to be like completely blurry like this, and then the face is sharp. You still want all areas to be nice and refined. But yeah, if you're doing a concept sculpt, what I do sometimes is I just do blur certain areas, or I just keep them really low, just so you're not going to focus on them. But that's not for like anything production-wise, or for anything final. That's more for ideas. How would you tackle translating a painting into a sculpture? That is a good question. Let's say assume it's a realistic painting. I would block it out first with maybe some mannequins. You can find some cool ones in ZBrush directly. Let's see if we can find those. Let's go looking. They are maybe on the projects. We have some other, here we go, projects and mannequins. And here you have some cool mannequins you can use. You can block those in and bring those in. You can post them up, and then you get some really cool things you can use.
And then you start to block in the sculpts, you start to get in the bony landmarks. If you want to go hardcore, you would shoot reference yourself, which you can use directly so that you have real life reference. You should get reference for everything, and then you should do thumbnails of it. Like you should take your block in of your scene, you should do some quick lighting, and then you should see what areas needs a lot of love. Hey Henning, have you thought about doing a hard surface stream? I would love to see one. That'd be fun. Hard surface is a tricky one. When it comes to streaming hard surface, or like just general modeling hard surface, that's pretty comfortable with that. I've been doing that for years. But I find hard surface tutorials hard to do. Because when you're doing sculpting, it's more like, yeah, we model a little bit here and we add some more volume here. When it comes to hard surface, it's a lot more, you have to plan out your work. Because it's not just like you're working with booleans and you're just sculpting like crazy. It is more, okay, this one should be 16 segments. It didn't work. We need 34 segments. So tutorials are hard to do, but hard surface stream, that could be fun. Just like modeling a prop or something.
Just a heads up, there is a hard surface artist, Andrew Hodgson. He streams as far as I know. I learned a lot from him. He's specializes in that. Might be good for people to check out his stuff.
Yeah, if anyone wants to follow like one of the best hard surface artists out there, Andrew Hodgson is phenomenal.
He's honestly like the person I look up to when it comes to hard surface. Really good.
He's so good. We used to work at NPC together many years ago.
I used to just watch his stuff and be like, oh yes.
No, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Andrew Hodgson, Ben is saying, that's exactly it.
Yeah, he's really, really good.
Here's a good question by Animation Space. Why are so many creatures so humanoid, especially aliens? Doesn't that make them less unique and interesting? So, here is, let me draw something, and I'll try to not log out now because I have to draw on the screen. Okay, so here is a slider, and this slider is this is completely alien and this is completely familiar, where this is like, you see this every day. This is a human. You've seen this every single day and you're like, I can touch this, I can see this on the street. This here is a blob of something. Maybe it's ethereal, maybe it doesn't exist. This here is 100% unrecognizable. If you want to have an alien in a movie or a game, you will probably have to keep them in the range of, who knows what the exact thing is, but maybe you want to keep them like here. And what this range is again, well, let's do not there. Let's do like alien. Maybe that's like an alien might be, maybe it's like here. Where here the aliens are getting pretty weird. Here you're getting like Arrival aliens from the movie Arrival. So I can't draw arrows. This is where they have like 7 arms or something, and they don't speak. They just splash ink up on a screen and they have their own language. And here you have like E.T. It's basically like an ugly child. It has the same amount of arms, it kind of speaks, and it's pretty familiar. The reason this is general the range is because this is where we can relate to people. We can relate to it. This is kind of like maybe where animals are as well. If you go over here and you start to be around here, now it becomes so weird. It becomes like he has a tentacle and he thinks through his toes or something, and their language is in the 4th dimension. You're like, all right, cheers, cool. I can't relate to that. Maybe it works if you want to do something like crazy Lovecraftian or something, but you want to be careful with going too far away. So you generally want to be somewhere here, which is, it's foreign, but it's not, you can still relate to it. If you go here though, that's just like attractive human to like Gollum human. It's still kind of human and it's still familiar, but you want to be careful with going too far away. This guy here, he's very familiar. He's just a crazy, crazy beefy dude with a bull's head. So he's like 90% familiar. You know all the elements he's made of. You're like, I could kind of see this existing in real life. It would be weird, but I could kind of see it. Thanks, Roger. I got the arrow tool. Let's try the arrow tool. Here's the arrow tool. Thank you.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. I like my arrows better. My pixelated, terrible arrows. I found actually a good tip for drawing arrows though. You draw up, then you draw down, and then you do this instead of doing this. But then, they look a bit uglier, but they're generally there.
The new video from FlippedNormals, how to draw arrows.
20-minute tutorial.
That's a DVD for you.
Yeah. Only $39.
$39.99.
What is the key to making original designs for creatures? I find in general, that's a good question in general. It's not so much how do you make something original for a creature, but it's how do you make something original? And what I find helps is you combine two existing things into something new. If you want to make something, let's take an example of something not original, like E.T., but he has 2 more arms. Like that's just exactly the same thing. But if you take something which is original and you can combine it into new ways, maybe you combine Greek mythology with sandwiches. Now Zeus is a ham sandwich with electrical powers, whatever. Like, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying I don't think it's been done before. Where you just can kind of take 2 random things, combining into different ways, and then go in there. For instance, take Star Wars. Star Wars is a fairly original idea, but if you look at like the source material, it might be like Dune or it might be medieval history. A lot of these kind of things, maybe some Japanese culture inspired, but they took a lot of took a lot of existing things and they combined it into something new. It's not about making something the world has never seen before. It's more about having your own twist on something which is already established. It's kind of like the slightly controversial example here with an iPhone. When the iPhone came out, there were a lot of smartphones which already existed. There were a lot of touch phones touch screens which already existed. But nobody had really combined it into a smartphone in the same way before. They took something which already existed, like the different screens and similar interfaces, but they combined it into something new. And now you can hate me for bringing up Apple. That's okay.
I like how this is controversial somehow.
It's just controversial in the sense that people are saying that, well, the iPhone isn't original and the iPad isn't original. But like, no, because already similar things existed, but not like this. And when this version came out, that changed a lot of things. Hey, you're still using the canvas pen display. Yes, I am. I'm using that right now. I'm really enjoying it. Only thing which is weird is sometimes the drivers kind of spaz out a little and I have to reboot the computer. Like that happens if I haven't used it for a while. It never happens during. It happened right before the stream, so I was just like, let's just test it, and I had to reboot it. But apart from that, like it's really good. I have no complaints about the actual one. I think you had some, Milpina, because you've been using a Cintiq for longer.
Sorry, what?
Any complaints about like any comparison between a Cintiq and this guy?
The actual painting I think is alright. My big issue with this one is the colors. I think the colors are really off.
Yes.
So if you want to do sculpting maybe, I think it's fine. But if you want to do painting or do anything with color, I think you have to look into that.
You have to calibrate it.
I had to do some color work on it. It's just, we spent so long calibrating it, I still didn't get it that close. I don't know with a proper calibrator, but otherwise I think it's a bit off.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like the worst thing for this one was the colors. We had to, we were in a bit of a hard time when it came to calibrating it, because you actually needed it for very color sensitive work.
Yeah.
What is a Minotaur workout routine? Well, that's very easy. He works out every single muscle for 4 hours a day, and then he eats only chicken. Nick is asking, I'm getting the pen display in a few days. How much upgrade do you think will be from a mouse? That's like night and day. It's like what is a Ferrari versus like walking? Like they're just 2 completely separate things. It might take you some little bit of time getting used to it if you've been using a mouse, but like it's it's a completely different world. Like there are two areas where it's gonna revolutionize your work. First one, you have pen pressure, which is just a whole different world. But also you're so much more accurate because you're drawing exactly what you want to draw on the screen. What's the reference software he's using? That is PureRef. Yeah, Fable the Unicorn just posted that. It's PureRef.
Just write it up.
Punky was asking, do you have any suggestions for pen tablets under $500? The Huawei one isn't that much more than that. You can probably get like a cheaper version of it, or maybe like a used version as well.
There's also the smaller ones, because you have
Yeah.
the 22-inch. Probably the 13-inch is cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sculpting with a mouse, don't do that. Like it's not like that's not even like me being elitist or something. It's like you will seriously screw up your body. Like just really seriously don't sculpt with a mouse. It's so bad for you. You might be fine for now, but long term you will 100% not be fine. It's really bad. So now I just flip the reference here. The way you flip your reference in PureRef is you just try out every single hotkey, and sometimes that works. I'm generally not sure which one it is. I'm just trying a combination of Shift and Alt and just dragging on it, and it seems to work this time. Henning 1, PureRef 0. The reason I flipped it is just because I'm not sure why this is, but my brain just works better this way. It just works better if I have it on the screen, as opposed to a screen right side, the character left side, like this. What we can also do, which is kind of cool, we can do this. And then we can do that. We can make it go behind, and then we can just set the opacity down. And then we can kind of just like match it up a little bit like this. And then we can see if we're matching or not. And then we can just go with the move brush, and we can kind of see what happens. Now this, it gets a little bit nasty, but let's see. Any advice for dealing with wrist pain? I do. You should look first, if you have the option, you should talk to a physiotherapist. Like seriously, I'm not being patronizing or anything. Just talk to somebody who knows about it. Because the problem is, if you look on YouTube, there are so many bad exercises. I looked at some for like neck pain, and like it was actually worse than it was like they would actually make your neck worse. There are some good exercises for the wrist, which I'm using, which involves putting your wrist palm on putting your palms on the wall, and then just putting a lot of weight on it, and just really stretching out your wrists. Also, working out helps me a lot as well. Get stronger arms really helped me. Plus, you get stronger arms. But also taking regular breaks. Seriously, taking regular breaks, shaking your arms around, and just taking your health seriously. If you work for 10-14 hours a day with your without taking breaks, your wrists are just gonna be a mess, unfortunately.
I think I noticed when it comes to that, by the way, is that I had weights on my mouse, and when I removed the weights, my wrist started hurting a lot less.
Oh.
So you can check if your mouse is too heavy, or if the grip is weird. Because if you're gripping too hard, that can also cause a lot
Okay.
of pain.
That's interesting. But yeah, like breaks helps a ton.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, don't work too late in the evening, said the guy who's now working at 11 p.m.
What's this now? That's wrong advice.
But yeah, like working too late in the evening is a lot of fun, and I love it. Like my brain just works better in the evening. That's just how it does. This is how it works. But I find that if I work very late, I have a significantly harder time recovering from last night in terms of the damage caused to my wrists. Yeah, I also had a lot of pain in my back as well. I was in Japan most of last year, and I had a terrible chair. like imagine the worst chair you can have as a dining chair, and that was kind of a work chair because I was in Japan and it's hard to communicate with people. So I didn't really have the best of equipment, and it kind of messed up my back quite a lot. So I'm still struggling with some pain there. But now I got a really good chair here in Denmark, and in Norway when I was stuck there as well, I bought like a decent gaming chair, not the best thing in the world, but just like spending some serious cash on a chair is first, they're gonna last forever, but also they're gonna significantly help you. What you can do, I talked about this in the last stream as well, is you can go to you can Google like in your country used office equipment, because a chair which is 2 years old is still gonna work really well, particularly if it's like a proper office chair. And a company which just went bankrupt near you is probably selling off all their office equipment at a pretty cheap price. So you might sometimes be able to get crazy good deals. I mean, if you have something like a Herman Miller chair and that chair is 10 years old, it might still be totally fine. And even if it's not, it might be repairable, and then you can get one crazy deal just from that. So I really recommend getting a good chair. Like I can't stress how much that has helped my health recently. What kind of chair do you have? I have 2 ergonomic chairs and they suck ass. Fair enough. I have a Herman Miller Aeron, which works really well. You can kind of just search Herman Miller and you can get there. Keep in mind they are very pricey, but mine is a used one, which was really nice. I just Googled essentially used Herman Miller's Denmark and I found one. And they have full warranty on them, at least in terms of like repairs and such. So for me, there was no issue at all with using that. It really improved my life. Here you can see an interesting one. Now I've been aligning this to this view for such a long time now, well, a few minutes, and it looks great from this angle. And then we turn around, and he's like, "Oh no, look at his crazy snout and muscles." So that's when you have to look at it from different angles. You can't just look at this from one angle. What are you making this Minotaur for? Well, I'm glad you asked. We have a sculpting challenge for FlippedNormals called Sculpt November. This is where for this month we have a nice little sculpting challenge. If you just sculpt for hashtag Sculpt November on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, I suppose, then you can find it there. This theme, the theme for this month, or this week rather, the last week of November, is ancient. So you can interpret that however you want to. The winner wins a free FlippedNormals exclusive product. So it's really cool. Just take part if you want to. I'm obviously not going to be winning anything. That would be a bit of cheating because I would also be a judge. But feel free to check it out. I believe Pida might be typing something now which can help you. So yeah, I just wanted to do a Minotaur for Sculpt November. But yeah, really important to rotate around. Do you ever sculpt in VR? That's a good question. I've been sculpting a little bit in VR. I have some friends of mine in Bergen they're making a software called Codon. I highly recommend that. I'll just write that in the chat right now. Codon. You can find it on Steam. It's a pretty cool sculpting tool in VR, and that's really cool. I'm using that along with the HTC Vive, and you can do some really nice things with that. So now it becomes the internal struggle of, oh crap, I rotated. Let's I change the angle and I matched it up, line it up to a new camera view. Let's fix all the problems. When will the FlippedNormals mentorship become mainstream? So we're currently still expanding on that. The thing is, we don't want to provide a service like a proper mentorship without it being properly tested. So what I'm doing currently is I'm going through currently with just one student, and I had a little break for a while now and starting up pretty soon again with that. But we want to make sure that it works properly and it doesn't become a thing where we don't have time to give the students all the love they deserve and all the effort which it requires. But for now, the mentorship is staying a bit dormant, but we will be doing just some stuff under the behind the scenes where we are providing just the mentorship to just a few people, so that once it becomes more mainstream, we're ready for that. If you're interested in learning about somebody's something about Blender and Retopo, I'll find you one.
Oh, do you have an exclusive for that?
Oh wow! Do you have an exclusive for Retopo and Blender? Maybe we do. I was gonna say we do because maybe because of. So here's a course I made this January. We talk about how to do Retopo of Blender, how to set up Blender and some Retopo concepts, and generally how the tools work in Blender. Talking about this is kind of a method I developed when I was in film. I can talk more about this if people have questions about it. Generally, when it comes to Retopo, you want to kind of block out a layout like this. People tend to start too specific. You start off with the eyelids and you start off with the lips and everything, but then you just like retopologizing yourself into a corner. You really want to start with blocking in the main loops. You don't have to think, oh, I need 6 segments here and 12 here, but you just have to make it match. Here you can just match this to that, this to that, this to that, add a loop here and this fits, add all this together, and everything becomes so much easier. If you have this quick layout, it's so much easier to retopologize something more final later on. Retopo by itself is pretty quick. Do you have any creature texturing tutorials you recommend? We don't have creature texturing yet, but what we do have, let's see where this one lives. Here are all the exclusive tutorials, by the way. I made one, let's see, I think it's down here somewhere. Made one last year, I think, on how to hand paint in Painter. Where are you?
Didn't you have a free video on Mari as well?
Yeah, we have a free tutorial on how to use Mari, which is I think is a pretty good video. It's like a 1-hour tutorial, and it teaches you how to use that.
Okay.
Here's one. This is not a creatures, but it's for a human. But the concepts are exactly the same. Basically, you start off with this is all hand painted, by the way. This is all 100% procedural. You're starting off by having different fill layers with different colors, and you're working on the mask and introducing different more color into it. It's a very scalable system. Who are some of the artists you look up to the most, apart from Morton, Emilia, and Elpida, of course? I look up to the lovely Elpida. I look up to Gio Nakpilla crazy amount. He is like my guy for sculpting. I actually have some of his references right here when it comes to sculpting as well, and I use this a bit for my guy. This is like 10 years old, and even then he's just kicking my ass. So even his rough work in progress for his own version is just like destroying me. Also have another guy I used to work with at DNEG, his name is Vimal, who's just also kicking my ass when it comes to sculpting. I learned so much from him, which was awesome. If you're learning beginner intermediate phase and you work on a project, how finished should a piece be before you let anyone analyze, critique it for improvement? I think it should be in general to the level where, even not if you're a beginner or anything, but I think it should be to the level where you don't know how to improve it more, and then you should take it further. There's always a level where you don't know how to improve it more. Like even if you were the most experienced artist out there is a point where you're like, I have now done this to the best of my ability. I don't know of any more obvious ways to improve my work. Please feedback my work. So in the beginning, as a beginner, this will be quite early on. Like you just won't know that much about how to how to do the work you need or to get leveled. So quite early on you get to there, and then you just sit back and you let them feedback your work. You're not too critical of it, like you're not asking them, you're not defending your own work, you're listening intently, you're taking notes, and you're asking why. You're always asking why. Not in a judgmental sense that why would you think that, but in a, okay, you said the proportions are wrong, why is that? Like specifically, why are the proportions wrong, and how can I fix this? But yeah, you want to do it early on, but after you've done all the changes you think are necessary. The most infuriating thing is if you give feedback to somebody and they're like, yeah, I know that. All right, cool. Next one. All right, yeah, fix the nose. Oh yeah, of course I know that one as well. All right, why are you wasting my time then with asking me all these things if you already know everything? So figure out what, squeeze out as much as you can, and then ask for feedback. And then ask for specific feedback as well. Sometimes it's useful to just go, what do you think about this? But particularly if you're emailing somebody about feedback, you have to be specific. If you're emailing me like an email like, hey, do you have some feedback for this? I probably won't get back to you, because then I'm gonna ask you, what do you want feedback on? And you're gonna be like, oh, I don't know. And I'm gonna say, yeah, but what do you want to learn? And you're gonna be like, maybe I want to improve on anatomy. I'm gonna be like, oh, cool, what part of anatomy? And now we have 6 email correspondences before we even get to the meat of it. But if you're asking me, what do you think about how I tackle the forearms, I can be like, cool, let's review some forearm anatomy, and here's a quick paint over. If you can also ask me for feedback in a sense where it's more of a yes or no question, or if I can explain something without opening Photoshop, that helps a lot as well. Just because it just takes a lot of time, and I tend to get back to a lot of people on it, but it needs to be something where I don't have to like dedicate an hour of my time to it, because people just don't have that amount of time, unfortunately. But a lot of people are more than happy to help. It just needs to be intuitive as well. You need to respect their time. It's very important. Why did you choose character art over any other discipline in CG? Do you know that was always what you wanted to do? Yeah, I just enjoy doing characters. I tried out a bunch of different things. I tried out essentially every single 3D software on the planet, and I've tried out a bunch of different things. But I just always came back to characters. No matter what I was doing for a little bit, I just was always drawn to making characters. So I just enjoy it. I still enjoy it. I'm not doing this as a job anymore, like to the same extent. I'm not getting paid to make characters for somebody, but I still do it because I just think it's a lot of fun, and I probably always do that. I don't think I'll ever stop doing characters. Any suggestion on England sculpting college? So when it comes to this is something we talked about in the last stream as well. You don't really have sculpting colleges or 3D modeling colleges. You have general, or in this case, I suppose, universities. I believe college in England just means like high school. But like for universities, they're more generalist. Nobody's going to just teach you sculpting unless maybe you refer to traditional sculpting. But if you want to do something that specializes sculpting or 3D modeling like that, and that's what you want to do, like online courses are seriously the way to go. You just won't learn that much about it from the universities, just because they're focusing on every single part. They're focusing on some animation and some rigging and some short films, and you just don't have that much time to do it. Like through my entire education, like a 3-year education, we had like 2 months of ZBrush. Like it's not a whole lot. So if somebody's dedicated enough in their spare time to do ZBrush, they're going to be much, much better than the people who go to university to study in terms of just pure ZBrush. Just because at the end of the 3-year education, you have 36 months experience with ZBrush, while the other people have like 2. Remember to save. Nasir is asking, paraphrasing here, but I just started using 3D and I'm using Maya and we're wondering if I should use ZBrush or Maya for sculpting. You should absolutely use ZBrush for sculpting if you want to do any serious sculpting work. Maya is not a sculpting tool. Like you can argue Blender can be used for some things, but like Maya is just not a sculpting tool. Use a dedicated sculpting tool for that. Or you know, if ZBrush is out of the budget, then you can maybe use Blender for it instead, or 3D Coat. But yeah, avoid sculpting in Maya at all costs. It is not good. Sculptors, like Matt is saying as well, sculptors can also be great. Are you using the smooth brush? Kinda. I'm using the smooth brush a little bit when I want to destroy form, but in general I tend to not use the smooth brush. Let me give an example. If I want to like smooth off some of these areas here, and I'm using the smooth brush, you can see that everything just becomes blurry. But if I want to if I want to improve it, I'm going over it with the clay brushes. And you can kind of see that now it has somewhat similar effect, but allows me to refine the shape instead. So I tend to use the smooth brushes, I tend to use the clay brushes a lot more than the smooth brushes. The smooth brushes can be fine, and some people love using them. Totally fine. That's might be their workflow. I tend to not use it a whole lot because it destroys the form a bit too much for me. But you know, whatever we prefer. There's no right or wrong way here. The only thing that matters is how do you control the form. And I find that when I use the smooth brush, I don't control the form that well. Can you think of a tip or a trick that a senior artist taught you that you now always use? Yes, I can. This is, let me see if I can do some Googling here. And we will search for, I'm actually gonna search on Google now. Tar, sand, lion. I'm typing one hand because of, you know, it's not great to type. It's not great to type when you have a,
no, you're
like,
just the slowest type in the world.
Cintiq, Tarzan, lion. Right, so I was working on, oh no, this is gonna bring me to this. Yeah, okay, cool. I was working on this shot here at NPC, and I think I was actually working on this face here for texturing, and I was working with my supervisor Paul, and this was the first time I really worked on something like this detailed. And I still remember when I worked on it, where he was just like, let me just draw over now. Where he was just drawing over and was like, look at the reference. And it was like, there are like this specific shape right there. There are 3 dots right there. You have this little thing there, and you have these general gradients here, and you have a little gradient there. And here you see it goes up here and down, and here it goes like this. And all these little things, it just kind of blew my mind in a sense. You know, I've been working on NPC for, I don't know, a year at that point. And it just opened my mind to how you analyze reference, instead of just being like, all right, cool, here's a lion. Let's just texture the lion, project some things on top. It was more, we can methodically analyze the reference we have, and we can recreate it. And by doing that, you get so much more life into your work. If we just go here and we just put this on top. For instance, if we're analyzing these 2 pieces now, obviously my dude is pretty low res, but let's analyze him in a VFX term now. Like, I'm now a supervisor and we're analyzing him. Stuff you'll be looking at might be like, okay, look at this big shape here. Let's get this in here. So then we have to get this shape in here. Then we have to get this shape to go like this, and that shape has to overlap like so. Then we have this shape, which has a curve to it. This has a curve to it like so. And then we have another big shape, which it flows from here, it flows from here, and it continues down. So let's break these shapes down. Let's have a shape like this, we have a shape like this, and we have a shape like this. And analyze the shape of the nostril. It goes up, then it goes down, and it's a bit straight, and then it goes like this. My shape is wonky, so we have to make it go up like this, down like this, up and down like so. And then you just continue with this. You start to analyze every single piece of the reference. You start to match every single wrinkle. And it's not to restrict you that you have to do all that. It is so that you can really use the reference from real life and bring this into your shapes. You can look at the little plane changes here, and we can see we're missing all of this. We can bring this in here. And if you start to do that, your work will just have so much more life to it. So that is a thing that I was taught while I was working, and I'm using every single day I'm doing anything with art. Like, truly analyze what you're working on, not just like glance at it, but like, and not just like overlay it either, but like understand what's going on, understand it and match it as closely as possible. The tool I'm using is called Light Shot. Let's see if I can type that on a laptop, which is even further away. I have a lot of tools on my desk. This replaces like the snipping tools for Windows. I really like this. I use this every day for all sorts of feedback work. So just what I talked about, this is what I'm doing now. I am just trying to analyze some of the plane changes and just bring this into it. Yeah, Light Shot is phenomenal. I really enjoy using Light Shot. You gotta be a little careful though when if you upload it to the web, everyone can see what you're doing with Light Shot. So just be careful with that. Oh yeah, you can really sculpt on an alpha. You get really cool results when you sculpt on an alpha. It just becomes a lot softer. I really prefer doing it. In earlier versions or in earlier stages of the sculpt, I tend to sculpt with an alpha because I have a bit more definition. But as I'm refining now, I tend to sculpt without an alpha. At this stage, maybe if I were to subdivide a bit more, add a few more polygons, let's actually do that. Let's Dynamesh once, and let's increase the resolution to something like this. At this point, it's more about general refinement. So this is where you could go over the smooth brush and smooth it out, but I tend to just go over the model and at all areas and just straight up refine what's there. So go over the entire model, and you do this a few times, and then you just see that you get so much more life into your model. So yeah, clay brush with no alpha is like a godsend. It will just improve your work so much. So now I'm just trying to do the VFX soup thing I was talking about before, where we're just getting in and we're just analyzing the reference and just getting in there. This is also where having good reference comes into play and will help you a bunch. And this is how you can analyze your own work without needing external feedback. It's always helpful because you're going to miss something, but by having good reference, analyzing it, and being methodical when using it, you can really get quite far by yourself. Now I'm using the damn standard brush to just refine the shapes a little bit more. It's really nice because it allows you to really have specificity. I find that a bit hard with the clay brushes. Like, clay brushes are great for adding volume, but it's not that good for adding a lot of clear specificity. Do you use the sculptor's features? Yeah, sometimes I do. If this is 100% Dynamesh, but yeah, Sculptor's Pro features can be phenomenal. It's not better or worse than Dynamesh, it's just a different tool. How can I use the reference like you're doing now? Yeah, like the person commented now, it's called PureRef. PureRef will save your butt. And to those who joined later in the stream, let me show you another cool trick you probably didn't know. If we take this guy and we want to see the anatomy model being next to it, we can go to transform, and then we can go to split view and set it to 1. And there we go. So that's again transform, split view, which is here, or split screen, and set it to 1, and now you can see the reference right next to it. So now you can start to compare this like so. So phenomenal tool. This is where it's really useful if you have a scan or if you have something like that next to it. Pure is so good. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Also, for those who joined late as well, just want to remind you all of that we have all products in FlippedNormals are currently 50% off. Woohoo! Woohoo! And for instance, here we have the 3D bundle for beginners, where we have all the beginner tutorials we made. I think I made all of these, apart from this one, which is made by Chunk Traffic Under. So here is like if you want to learn Maya, Blender, ZBrush, Sculpting, a Painter, or Designer. Really useful stuff. Like I think this entire bundle will contain more information than like at least first year of university, and particularly more Maya training, at least core Maya training, and at least as much useful training as for ZBrush than an entire education, just because there isn't that much ZBrush. I find the baking process in Mari cumbersome. How did you bake maps and VFX pipeline back when you were doing it? What issues are you having when it comes to that? What issues do you have with baking? So there was somebody who was just asking now about if we're gonna make videos like we did for the summer sale. We're not gonna make videos for the summer sale recommending products, but what we are doing is something even better. We've already made a lot of articles where we are recommending a lot of tools for it. So we're recommending a lot of products in there. So if you wanna check out those articles, we just link those there. So there you go. If you want like the best products of 2020 is right there, best ZBrush products, best creators, all that. We have that right in those articles. So can you lock the split screen view? Is a good question. So kinda. What you can do is if we go back here to tab view and then solo, then you can set it to different numbers because ZBrush is logical, right? So that means 1 is left, 2 is up and down, 3 is the other side, and 4 is, who knows what 4 is? 4 is up and down. So yeah, you can kind of do that, but yeah, it's as intuitive as ZBrush gets, I suppose. You can also map this to the bottom as well, or just move it to the bottom, so you can easily do that. Speaking of mapping, here's a little tip for you as well. The solo key, you should map this to the 1 key. You don't have to, but it helps. Then you can just click the 1 key and you can quickly do that. Another thing I remapped as well, which is mega useful, is you want to get rid of this bloody guy, the expose button, because that kind of explodes the model. The problem with that is it's set to Shift X by default, which is very near Shift X for Shift X is very near X. So you might accidentally just expose your model when you want to disable orthogonal symmetry. So I've set symmetry to Shift X, and I've just removed this thing here because you really don't want to have this dude right next to the symmetry button, because if you have a heavy model, like this one is fine, but if you have a truly heavy model with like 200 subtools, you just have to like take a walk afterwards because it just takes too long and it's really frustrating. What is your opinion on abandoning projects you're not happy with? If you're working on a project and it's just not working out, what point should you say, okay, let's scrap it? I would say scrap it the moment it is not doing anything for you anymore. Don't continue a project if you have zero passion for it or if it's not turning out well. Spend that energy on something else. Don't invest time and energy into something else. It's called into something like that. It's called sunken cost fallacy. Essentially, just because you spend a lot of time on it doesn't mean you have to continue it. It's a logical fallacy because of the way our brains work. Is there any benefit to a pen display compared to a regular pen tablet? Depends on how you define benefit. A lot of it is down to personal preference. I prefer using a display because it's more immediate for me, because I can draw directly on the screen. There isn't a translation. It's like if I want the stroke to be here, well, the stroke goes there. If the stroke doesn't go where I want it to be, that's because I'm not good enough as a sculptor. But it means I just have a lot more control. So I'm sculpting faster and I think the results are better. Disadvantages, obviously it is not portable at all. And whenever I use it like properly, then I have to rotate or move stuff around from my screen. And that's why I'm seeing if I'm typing anything now, it's mega awkward because I still haven't found a good setup for my keyboard and the pen display.
To be fair though, there are smaller pen displays that are more, the 13-inch I think is pretty movable.
That's true. Yeah. Another disadvantage as well is that it might hurt you just ergonomically, hurt your back and your neck ergonomically. I'm not using it that much because, like I said, I don't do sculpting all day. But if you are looking down a lot more, which means you might get pains in your back, which you don't when using a regular pen tablet, because then your neck is aimed straight forward. But that might be mitigated by taking a lot of regular breaks. But I know a lot of people who's got really hurt by using Cintiqs for a long time because they didn't take enough breaks and they were looking down. I'm looking down right now, which is not great for my neck.
You should generally just take breaks though.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. Again, said a guy who's sculpting for hours at 11:40.
Oh wow.
Time flies, we're having fun and ranting with Blender and doing accidental ASMR.
Mm-hmm.
Currently I can't buy ZBrush and have been stuck with sculpting in Blender. Should I keep learning sculpting in Blender or should I switch as soon as possible? I mean, if you can't switch to ZBrush, then you can't switch. To put it like this, it's a lot better to keep improving your sculpting in Blender than to wait, I don't know, a year and then get ZBrush and then continue there. Because that's what we talked about, like if anyone has got the Intro to Sculpting series, where it's all about the way you're thinking. You can have an expert ZBrush sculptor jump into ZBrush that's gonna kick all sorts of ass because the concepts are the same, or an expert Blender user jump into ZBrush and just own the place because it's about your way of thinking. It's how you approach problems. A traditional sculptor can pick up ZBrush, and once they understand the weird interface, then they're gonna be unstoppable. Like you can take. It's much easier to teach a traditional sculptor how to use ZBrush than it is to take general CG artists and teach them how to do traditional sculpting. The deep fundamentals just translate really well between the different packages. What is your favorite video game art style? I am very partial towards Fable. Breath of the Wild is obviously beautiful as well. I just really like the art style of Fable, probably because I was a kid when it came out and it inspired me a lot. I just think there is something really sweet and strangely wholesome about bandits killing your family, I suppose. Yeah, it's a little dark, but I just enjoy that, like the slightly stylized proportions, the strangely realistic lighting, I suppose. I'm excited about the new one. I just really enjoy that. Dishonored is also amazing as well.
Didn't you say you really like Dishonored?
I really like Dishonored. I really like the art style of Dishonored. You can also see that in my personal work as well. Like it was heavily inspired by that. Dishonored came out when I was in a very formative stage of my art style, and I just loved it. I still do.
You switched your name to Fundamentals. from Venice.
Yeah, sure. Putting the fun back in fundamentals. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I think your hand painted tutorial was inspired by Dishonored, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, no.
No, the hand painting is realistic.
Oh, okay.
Like that has nothing to do with Dishonored. That's fully
Alright.
it's fully realistic.
Fair enough.
That was essentially how can you get as close to hand painting as possible without
Apparamente modo.
No,
No?
maybe a little, but not. Maybe like a little backstory wise, but not like. Actually, he was one of the few which wasn't.
I have a question for you.
What is your question for
Can
me?
you cow tip your Minotaur?
You cannot cow tip your Minotaur because
Oh.
this Minotaur would kick your ass.
Okay.
That's a good question though. You should try it. You should try it with this guy, Alpida.
I can do it in Hades.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Cow tipping Asterius. Thank you so much, Take Two. I really appreciate that. I wish we had hundreds of thousands of views per video, but you know, that's the way it works. We're gonna be doing something different with YouTube now in once the Black Friday sale is over, and where we're gonna do more like a bit more like entertaining content as well, which is gonna be a good challenge. We're gonna have some sculpting challenges and just good mix between like just spicing stuff up a little bit. Do you promote your videos like Google AdSense and such? Nope, we don't really do paid advertisement. The only paid advertisement we do is sort of keywords, FlippedNormals on AdSense, but Google Ads as it's called now. But no, we don't promote our videos at all, like financially.
For what Yehor Janusz said? I don't think I personally know a place to get hashtags, but I know that Buffer is pretty nice for posting on multiple social media at the same time.
Buffer's nice.
Pretty useful tool for that.
Ooh, Henning and Wharton challenge each other. That would be interesting. Yeah, we have some ideas for that.
I really want to see that.
Yeah, we would like to do that. Where one of them is probably going to be a challenge to the death, but you know that's just the way it's got to be.
I want it to be filmed like a documentary.
Who is the best gladiator? But no, that would be really fun. What is the best dog breed? That is a trick question. They're all the best dog breed, Ben. You know that. They're all the best. And then golden retrievers.
Corgis have very nice butts.
And feet. Do game artists talk to you about Houdini and game art creation? So I don't have a whole lot of experience in either Houdini or game art or environments, so I don't want to. That's a very question, but I don't want to talk too much about that because it's really not my area of expertise. Just in general, though, I know that Houdini is being used more and more, both in game art and film for environments, due to its procedural nature. It's just so fast. You want to scatter 6,000 trees on a plane, awesome. You want to change the plane, no problem. Want to replace the trees, no problem. You want to modulate this and fill up with a crowd, no problem. How do you stay motivated to do personal work outside of professional work? Such a tricky one. We had a question like this earlier on as well. Like it is hard just because you work with a computer every single day. Like what helps me is to work on something different. If you work with ArcViz all day at work, you don't want to do ArcViz at home as well. Like it's just you just need some distance for it. For me, ZBrush is more like that. It is a bit zen for me. It always has been. Even when I was doing sculpting work, it was still It was still different. I could do my own things. Find something which makes you relaxed and isn't necessarily too pipeline heavy, because when you're doing stuff at work, it can be very heavy, depending on what you do, but it can be very boring. A lot of it can be make sure that the data flows in the right way and the machine works, all the things. So be sure you do something which inspires you. And also, this is a problem as well, when people go from being students to professionals. You're so used to making portfolio pieces, and portfolio pieces are not necessarily there to do stuff you love. They're there to get you a job. So when you do get the job, you need to switch away from making a portfolio to you doing stuff you enjoy doing. I used to do that way too much, that every single piece I was doing was for a portfolio, and I think it's a bit toxic, particularly when you're working essentially on portfolio pieces all day at work anyway. Can a FlippedNormals skin kit be used in Blender? That's a good question. I haven't tested it by myself, but the thing about the skin kit is only a set of image maps. There isn't anything special about it in terms of it doesn't use any VDMs or anything like that. So if you can use proper alphas for sculpting in Blender, then you can absolutely use the skin kit for that. I believe there is a free sample of the skin kit out as well, so you can test that out. If the free sample works, then the full thing is going to work as well. For anyone who is wondering, let's just do a quick show for the skin kit. The skin kit is a pretty popular product, which I made last year. The purpose is to, here we go, by awesome work by Damien. He was here in the chat just a few days ago. Where the point is that you can make really awesome stuff. Like you can make super cool skin pores right away, like this, for faces or for bodies or anything else. It's just a really powerful tool as well. Again, 50% off now, so it's $20. So yeah, I recommend this to anyone who's using ZBrush. I'm doing this a lot actually, using through my regular work. Let me see if I can actually show it, because that'd be kind of cool. I have hide this guy, and then I have that standard brush, which is to change the default hotkey for that, so that's good fun. And then we will I have it under my alphas. Here we go, PSD. So here's the skin kit. The difference from the skin kit and some other ones is that this uses a mid value of 50. So this looks a bit different. Double click it, and there we go. Now we can drag rect, and now it ships with a macro which does this. You just have to go to here and change this to 50. There we go, close enough. Cool. So now you can just drag it out, and now you'll have really nice skin like instantly like this.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it works really well. These are all hand sculpted, so I spent a lot of time just sculpting up all these things here. It's a bit rough on this guy because he is so low poly, but if I show this on a sphere, for instance, make polymesh, subdivide a few times, you can really see how crazy results you can get. So the focus shift to -100, you can also just blend these in with a square like this as well. So I often do this. I often use the skin kit on characters like this. Like if you want to try some like rhino skin on him, that might work really well on his back. Again, I don't have the alpha set up for the macro setup, so just change the mid value, and there we go. And then we can see if we can add this to his back. So if I was using this for like a full-on project, I would have done this. I would have straight up used the skin kit for his back. Like just see how awesome textures you get for this. Like it's done in like no time whatsoever. So it's really cool what you can do with this. It just allows you to experiment. This is a concept which is really important to understand. It's something which took me a long time. That when you're working and designing things, it's not just about making the final design. It's about how many versions can you get. And that's something like this allows you to do. You can now just very quickly just try out what is it like with rhino skin. A few seconds and you have like full coverage with rhino skin. And you're like, that doesn't work super well. And then you can try another one. You just undo it, try it with another one, and then you can try a new version. Instead of you just sculpting this up from scratch. So this can really save your butt. But back to sculpting. But yeah, seriously, like the skin kit has saved my bacon so many times. I use it for essentially all my personal work. And little teaser, we might be making another one for the face, which is gonna be which is gonna be even better for just the face. The skin kit is good for the face, but it's more a general skin kit. The other one will be like a face kit. Thanks, Animation Space.
Like that there's a little bit of a delay between when it streams and when we get the comments, so it's like press the button. What?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Is it difficult to transition from games to film? I would like to learn Nuke for VFX. I would say it depends on what you're doing. If you're a general modeler and you have strong fundamentals, it's not that hard. The fundamentals are a large part the same. The differences between the two is that you don't really optimize for film. So if you spent all your time in games really learning how to optimize the crap out of things and you're crazy valuable in film, or in games, you wouldn't really be that valuable in film because we don't really optimize things. If you know every single trick about normal map baking and how to get clean bakes, in film you're like, all right, cool, we don't do that. So it's not that valuable of a skill. But if you have a great eye for technical things and you have a good eye for general details and you're a good texture artist, then it's great. Nuke is also an awesome tool. I really enjoy using Nuke. Just because it's such a logical tool in a sense. Like it just makes sense to me. It's basically like, you know, it's just like Substance Designer just for compositing. How much can he lift, bro? He can lift all the things.
He can lift 10.
He can lift 10, between 10 and 60.
Okay.
What can't he lift? I'm definitely getting some more courses to sale. I'm sculpting dwarfs this Christmas. Thanks, Timmy. It's really cool to see. I hope you enjoy the course. If you need some help with intro sculpting or anything like that, just shoot me an email. My contact info is in the PDF in the course. You can also send me a message on Discord as well. Just show me your progress. It's super fun to see when people are following stuff like intro to sculpting and they're just improving that.
Oh yeah, there's FlippedNormals Discord for people that might not know. It's
go up here,
yeah.
Discord, and then you can go and do all your very much not shit posting. To say what he's talking about here is this is the course we're talking about. We learn how to make this guy from scratch. Along with a bunch of different sculpting techniques like stylized sculpting, and here are the steps. We start from the sphere, we block him in, and then we gotta still sculpt the face, even though he has a beard. We sculpt a beard, we refine him even more, give him eyebrows, and just like make him nice. We talk about anatomy, like exactly what I'm talking about now. We are also going way more in depth about. We talk about compression and stretching. And just a lot of different things like appeal and flow and everything like that. So if you're interested in this, I recommend Intro to Sculpting as well. But yeah, I think this guy here can lift most things. There's nothing he can't really lift. I'm gonna aspire to do a Minotaur from playing Hades, because one of my favorite characters in Hades is a Minotaur. He's not a Minotaur. He is the Minotaur.
Who is your least favorite character?
That's a good question. I like them all, I think. Who's your least favorite character?
I mean, Theseus is pretty annoying, but that's because I made him annoying.
yeah, exactly. I think I like all of them. And one of my favorites as well is also Chaos.
I really like Chaos.
Chaos is such a badass. Yeah, I mean, this stream will also be available on YouTube as well, like right afterwards. We're not doing anything with that, so...
Thank you for watching, though, Jenny.
Yeah, thanks for watching, Jenny.
I wish I worked on that game.
No, we didn't. We're not talking about what character we enjoy working on. We're just talking about we're just geeking out over Hades because it's the best thing ever. If anyone's played Hades, I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well, because it's just such a fun game.
It really is.
I mean, it is essentially like if heroin was a game. I mean, it's just the most addictive thing ever made. But strangely enough, it doesn't feel like the dirty kind of addiction. It feels like the happy kind of addiction.
What does that even mean?
Like friendship.
Okay.
Okay, I think I have to spend some more time on his legs now because it's getting a bit unbalanced. Also, his feet has got about exactly 0 love.
It's because they're not hoops. For people that are playing Hades, how many runs have you had?
If it's above 130, I salute you. If it's below 120, I vanquish you.
Wait, am I vanquished?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, Albina.
No, man.
Happens.
Oh, looks like I'm done then.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a stream for people who more than 130 runs, please.
I like that JDSP says he beat him around 36. That was around when I beat him as well.
Yeah, I beat him on round 38 as well. It seems like that's fairly consistent, actually.
Yeah. Sornegware is asking, what about 3D code for sculpting?
3D code is something I haven't really used a whole lot. It seems to be okay, though it has a bit of a weird terms of service. They're like, at least it used to be like, don't make things which offends Christianity in their terms of service, which is a bit of a weird one. But I'm not sure if they still have that. But 3D code seems to be a perfectly fine tool. I have nothing against 3D code. I'm on no anti-3D code crusade. Yet. Oh wow, that's impressive. Beat Hades in extreme measures. Yeah, I still haven't done that.
I'm playing on golden mode because I just want to be relaxed while I play.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I mean, it's a hard game.
Yeah,
it really is.
I'm mostly tired after work. I just want to be on the couch and kick some ass.
I like that. They don't even punish me for doing that. They're just like, well, if you want to play God mode, just do God mode.
Yeah.
If you were to make this guy, paraphrasing here because I'm looking at the screen now, if you were to make this into a full character, would it take a long time to rig and pose him? You can do it in a ZBrush quite easily, actually. We have a tutorial on this on Z-sphere rigging. You can just Google that yourself. Z-sphere rigging FlippedNormals tutorial. That we show a really cool technique for how to do Z-sphere rigging. Essentially, you block out some quick Z-spheres inside the character, and you can use that to pose the character up. It's super powerful. You don't need any weight paint or anything like that. You just kind of use Z-spheres as weights. It's weird, but it works. Obviously, you can't use that for animation, and it's not very reusable. It's kind of it's a very linear process. You sculpt, and then you pose, and then you go back, and your rig is kind of gone. But it's still real powerful. If not, you can use, what I sometimes do as well is I use a plugin for Maya, which I believe is free. It's called Advanced Skeleton. At least it used to be free. You throw in a skeleton rig there, and then you assign some weights to your character, and you have a really good advanced rig right away. Like way more advanced rig than anything I can make myself. Not that I can make any advanced rigs. I get confused, and I ask my friend Matthias to help me out because I get scared. He's like, Henning, if you just understood Maya.
Rigging is an interesting one. It's fun once you understand it, but it takes so long to understand.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, rigging is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, advanced skeleton is great. Like it's Again, I haven't used it in years though, again, so I'm not gonna say it's awesome today, but it's been a phenomenal help throughout particularly when I was studying. We based the rigs for final film on advanced skeleton. Really just helped us.
There's another one called, I think, Maya Human IK or something.
Is that the one where just ships with Maya?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, there is one in Maya.
That's an okay one if you want to just quickly post something.
We don't have any tutorials on baking normal maps, but we are working with our friend Chunk Trafficander, who will be probably making a tutorial on like the ultimate guide to baking. It's probably going to be like a 3-hour tutorial, and it just cover everything you need to know about baking, how to do it correctly, really how to troubleshoot things, what are the different concepts. So really excited about getting that started. Hey, thank you for getting products through the sale, or in the sale. That's really cool. I hope you enjoy your products. We put a lot of love into our products, so I really hope you like them. It's a lot of work to make tutorials, so one of the coolest things I can see is when it pays off and people really learn a lot from it. That's a skill I had to learn separately from being a 3D artist. In doing good tutorials is not a natural step for a 3D artist. Like it is, you have to essentially learn to become a teacher, and you can be a great 3D artist and you can be a terrible teacher. So it's a very hard skill to learn, and it's something I'm still progressing on. I'm not ever going to be like, yeah, I know how to be a teacher now. It's always a skill I'm learning and improving on. So it's really cool to see when people enjoy our tutorials. I made a lot of tutorials in the last few years, a lot of intro series, which are particularly hard to do. So it's been a lot of fun. Gonna make a new tutorial series pretty soon about Blender for advanced 3D artists, which I think is gonna be fun. It's for people who knows how to use 3D, but you want to learn Blender, but you have no interest in looking at introduction to Blender tutorials. Like, now we're gonna make maybe like not gonna name any specific tutorials, but like you have no interest in building the simplest things and following vertices.
I'm really
tutorial.
excited about that one.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Do you think Substance Designer is more for specialists? I think Substance Designer is a great general tool. I mean, you can specialize as much as you want to, but it can also just be really good if you want to make some quick materials, or if you want to process data. It's kind of similar to Nuke in that sense, where Nuke is a specialist tool because it's for compositors, but it's also great for texture artists or anyone who needs to process a lot of data really quickly, a lot of image data. This guy looks so mad now. He's getting hella angry.
I'm wondering, maybe the guys can tell us what type of videos would they like to see next, and what
Yeah.
type of tutorials would they like to see next.
If you guys have any relevant or any cool video suggestions or tutorial suggestions or anything, like, I would love to hear what you guys think. A lot of the videos we made, a lot of the premium tutorials, and a lot of the YouTube videos are very much based on requests. So.
And we should also say that there is a second channel now, where there's a lot of like free chapters from the exclusives and announcements there on what's going on.
You should link to that.
Okay, 1 second. Oh my god! What is it called?
It's called FlippedNormals Marketplace.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's really cool because we want to, obviously the marketplace is important for us, but we also want to make sure that the main channel just stays focused on what's important, going back to our roots. We don't want to mix the business side of it with the YouTube side too much. Some overlap here and there because there can be some general interests for people in it, but we just want to separate it out. Seems like people are appreciating that. There we go. So make sure to subscribe to that one if you want to. If not, then don't. Principles of texture painting, similar to Intro to Sculpting. That is actually one we have been talking about as well. Morten and I talked about that just today. It's something I would love to do, where the idea is that you would get a quick introduction to the different tools, what they can do, and the general way of thinking about things. Particularly for texturing, people are overcomplicating so many things. So I haven't really made many texturing tutorials, which I should, because I used to do 50% texturing and VFX. So I have a pretty decent grasp of it. And I see a lot of common beginner mistakes there. Overcomplicating things, using the wrong tool for the job, really only doing everything in Designer, trying to make smart materials out of everything instead of observing. So I would really like to make a specific one. Something with stylized shaders. That could be cool. Substance paint or creature texturing tutorial? Yes, please. I would also very, very much like that. I would love to make a texturing tutorial for Substance Painter. Like a creature one. Nuke compositing. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'd love to do something on Nuke as well. I've been watching your guys for a long time now, and I really love the way you teach, because you explain why you do something really well, and your anatomy is so good looking. Well, thank you very much, Lenny. I appreciate that. Anatomy is a tricky one to get right. That's also something we would love to make a proper course on as well. Like Intro to Sculpting is not an anatomy course. Anatomy is a very specific way. The anatomy basically refers to this muscle goes here, this muscle goes here, and memorize this, at least in a big sense. At least that's how it's taught. Well, Intro to Sculpting focuses way more on this is how you get appealing shapes. You do, of course, have to have an understanding of anatomy, but a lot of it is understanding of how shapes work. You can be a master of understanding each muscle and all that, and your sculpts still look like crap because you don't understand the concept of appeal, of rhythm, of everything like that. Clothes for games. That would be good. Elpida is working on a tutorial now for Marvelous Designer, just in general. Not specifically for games, but I mean, it would be also for games. Thanks a lot, Bobby. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. It's the thing when it comes to learning about teaching is it is so hard because you can always learn something better, like learn something more. Like you think you got it down, and then somebody has some feedback, and you're just like, oh crap. Now you're seeing all the mistakes in all your work, and it's not like you can just go back and redo it. Like when you learn something new in teaching, you kind of the way you fix it is you make the next one better.
Would you like to talk a bit about what's going on with the head there? Because there's a lot of interesting lumps and bumps.
Yeah, what's going on with the head is that I am looking at reference. And the thing is, this is where if I was doing this a lot, I would get some proper reference of a bull and the muscle layout and all that, and I would understand what's going on. But I am not doing that because I don't really understand what's going on in terms of the head. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get down the main shapes. I'm trying to get down the bony landmarks, some of the general things from the skull. And then I'm trying to get down some of the fleshy bits as well, very much based on the reference. And one thing I'm noticing now is that I need to improve the eyes because my eyes are looking very evil and very small. So I will go in and I will kind of do the VFX thing as I did before. I'll again try to not log off by using light shot. And then we can compare these two. If you look at this eye, this goes like this, goes like that, and down. My eye just does that. So that needs to be better. The bottom lid goes like this, this and that. And my eye just goes like bloop. So I need to really refine the shape for it as well. You can also see there are some lovely wrinkles below here as well. Now the reference I'm using isn't necessarily like of a real bull, it's of a 3D model, and I don't know where this comes from. I know it's from TurboSquid, because that's just what Google told me, but it's not like it's not necessarily a scan or anything, so it's probably just an artist interpretation. But I still think there's a lot of stuff I can learn from it and I can take from it. So when you are doing this, don't assume you know anything. That's one of the best pieces of advice I have for artists, is assume that you don't know anything. Because if you assume you know something about what a bull looks like, well, you don't have a visual library for something like that. So use reference for everything and then go from there.
What would you say when you're making it now? What do you want it to feel like?
I want this guy to feel like he is powerful.
Okay.
Like that's something that's really important when it comes to sculpting. You have to nail down the emotional quality you want from the piece. Like that's like probably the most fundamental thing when it comes to art. No matter what you're doing, is asking the question, what do you want it to feel like? If you want this guy to feel old and frail, are you going to give him pecs, which means he can crush a beer can if he just moves his arm together? Or are you going to give him pecs which are really frail and soft? Are you going to make the planes like this, which are really like, there are a lot of big plane changes? Or are you going to make them like a lot of very fragile? Everything you do is revolving around what emotional quality you want. And I'm going from there. I'm trying to give him strong, clean shapes. Because that's the emotion I want to get across. Also, a little tip: make a little like slither in the eye like this.
Actually, eyes for bulls are the other way.
Oh, look at Elpida. She knows what it looks like. See, that's what I mean. Like, you don't know what stuff looks like unless you've been looking at a reference. But yeah, like.
I mean, I think so. Imagine if I'm wrong as well.
She probably, well, could be. But yeah, like this is like a very temporary thing. It is just to get character across. If you want it to look more, this again goes into the emotion you want. If you want him to feel more animalistic, make eyes like this. If you want to make him feel more human, you give him eyes more like this. This is where you have to use your own interpretation. I want him to feel more human, so therefore I want him to eyes to be more like this. And I want to rotate them a little bit forward so that he looks a bit more articulate.
I really like bull eyes.
Bull eyes are great, just not if you're doing something more human.
I think like the whole cow looking eyes was a really cool design.
Yeah, I think I'll try that actually.
Yeah,
just like.
I mean, you can change it later as well.
I can. Yeah, it's pretty cool. He looks pretty bad now. Pretty badass. A tutorial suggestion: effects for games. That would be really cool. Fire, lightning, portals, etc. That's actually a really good idea. If you want to make him feel powerful, give some dumbbells and a protein shake next to him. Should do that.
He does like 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and runs 10K a day. And has no AC, and he lost his hair.
Yep, that's how I lost my hair. I just ran 10 kilometers a day.
No, just throw one punch and you're good.
Yeah. Save. I'm gonna save this as a new version. How did you learn hard surface and what do you recommend? I kind of just been doing this for a long time, so I didn't really have any specific resources for learning hard surface because I learned this like 2007. But a good way is to look at different props and try to recreate them. The thing with hard surface is you can't just do hard surface because it's very different if you're doing this for film or for games. If you're doing it for film, you will have to model in a very specific way. You can't just like Boolean your way out of things and go from there. You have to make it work with subdivision surfaces, meaning like if you hit 3 in Maya, you use a subdiv modifier in Blender, subsurf modifier in Blender, whatever it's called, then it's going to work with that. So it's a different skill set depending on if you're doing film or games. But a big one is try to model a lot of props. Try to model every single thing you can see on your desk. and then go from really simple things to really difficult things.
There's definitely a lot of resources online about topology and how to make things look smooth.
Again, look at Andrew Hodgson, because
Andrew Hodgson is great for hard surface.
He's just the guy for that.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks Dylan, Brad. Appreciate it. Now a problem seeing Wilhelm sculpt is I have to balance this out a little bit because his face is now very wrinkled, but the body really isn't. And he looks like he has a little bit of a Joker scar as well, which I do kind of like. I like that he is more like animal than man, because that is kind of the original Minotaur. Like he's not like this like beautiful Hades man, which is a reference. Yeah, he's not like the original Minotaur. Is not like a nice. It's not like a god who has a big axe and has like nice fancy clothing with gold on it. No, he's a beast. He's straight up a beast, and I kind of like that. He has these kind of scars. They're a little bit accidental, but you know, if Morten was here, he would yell at me for putting scars and everything. But is Morten here? Maybe. Who knows?
I'm also linking the character guide you wrote, because
yes,
there was a question about how to become a character artist for games. That's like a good general guide for character art careers.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time some years back writing a guide on how to become a character artist. Now, this is not specifically for games. It is kind of for games and for film. Regardless, there are some regardless of the tech, there are some real similarities between the two. Like, it's not a junior position necessarily, unless it's a literal junior character art position. But there are some good information in there which can really help you.
Paige is asking about a good reference for us, especially for muscles. I would say.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I would say Google, but also there's a few artists that have some really good work on muscles.
So here is one now.
But also FlippedNormals.
Also FlippedNormals, but I'm actually not gonna. Well, I'm gonna plug us a little bit because we have some cool stuff. You should check out like the beginner bundle for 3D and such. But actually, 3D Scan Store.
Yeah, that's a great.
This one. This one is really good for that. They also have a. Don't worry about their sale. You should check out our sale. I shouldn't plug other people here, but
an affiliate link?
I don't have an affiliate link actually. But here you can see the cool thing about using scans is that it's real. It's not using some kind of. It's not. You're not going to be fooled by the lighting at all or anything like that. You are purely using. It's pure data. The data you're looking at, even if it looks funky, it's correct because a person looks like that. So I highly recommend if you're studying to get some actual scans and then trying to recreate those. This is where if you're new to this stream now, I'm going to show you a thing which is going to blow your mind. Check this out. 2 of them. Transform. Split screen. Boom! What is this? This is amazing. Wow. If you have a scan to the left and you have your model to the right, you can really do some cool stuff with this, where you can now recreate the scan and you can just use that as reference. Like, it's not cheating because you're just looking at it, you're not projecting anything. And that means you can now generally do your best. If you are doing that, I highly recommend that you do not start with the base mesh at all. The reason you don't want to start with the base mesh is because that gives you way too much for free. With this guy here, he's from a sphere. I did use some base mesh stuff for his hands and for his feet eventually, but majority of this guy is 100% from a sphere. And the cool thing, you can't cheat. It means, this is something we've been talking about in some of our videos. Figure out what you want to optimize for. If you're learning figure sculpting, you're optimizing for learning figure sculpting. You're not optimizing for the best result. You don't want to cheat yourself out of a learning experience by making the result nicer.
Also, because you said it starts from a sphere, the previous stream is on YouTube, so you can just find that and see how it started if you want to.
Yeah. Let me show you how that one ended. I think I have that here. Yeah!
Oh no, the legs.
Yeah, this is how it ended, and this is where we're currently at. Now, between these two as well, I did do a little bit of design tweaking as well. I had some nice reference, and I just matched it up. But yeah, this is where he was the end of the last stream. This is where he is now. He's a little better, but you know, we can take him further still.
Cool.
He's getting pretty close now, actually, to like a concept sculpt I would pick up in movies. Like I had most of the models I would pick up in film when I was a modeler were significantly less refined than this model here at this point. I'm not saying like good or bad design, I'm just saying like the pure refinement of it. It was more like the tricep was defined by a few brush strokes and all that.
Cody Burks is paraphrasing now, saying that you should use concept art that matches the studio that you're applying for when you're making a showreel piece for that studio. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It helps a lot. Like you should be general. Like if you only want to work for one studio and they have an extremely specific art style, you want to be a bit careful with that, because if they don't take you in, then like you won't have a job. So I recommend being like not incredibly specific, but I also recommend to tailor it a bit towards, maybe have one piece this is 100% Disney piece, or like even though it's tailored to the studio, it's still a commercially viable piece. You just don't want to spend a year developing a portfolio for like Arcane Studios and they don't care about Disarmed anymore. But yeah, if you're tailoring your specific concept art to the studio, that might work. That's a bit like hit and miss. But what you definitely want to do, you want to tailor your showreel or portfolio to the industry you want to do. If you want to work for feature animation like Disney and Pixar, you don't want to have a reel filled with realism. You want to have a portfolio filled with more stylized work and all that. And same if you're going for film and you only have real stylized stuff, they're like, cool, but we can't really use you a whole lot because you're not showing that you understand the work they're doing. So definitely tailor your portfolio to the industry you're going for. Like you, in terms of like the different studios, there is no difference between ILM and Framestore and DNEG and NPC in terms of like the visual style they're doing. Like, it's impossible to differentiate them. Like, and that's by design. That's because they're working on the same movies. Like if you could see in a film, oh, this is clearly a Weta shot and this is clearly an NPC shot, then it doesn't work as a unity. So, you know, those studios are devoid of a specific style, very much by design. But yeah, all that to say, it depends. James is asking, how do you set up a displacement map from ZBrush and Substance? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I was really trying that out, and I can't get it to work. We were actually going to make a tutorial on it, because with Substance supporting displacement map, I was like, sweet, we're going to be the first one to make a tutorial on YouTube. And I tried everything, and I just can't get it to work. It just doesn't look good. Like, it's not like it's lacking a little bit. Like, it was just displaying the wrong thing. Alright, so we are nearing the end of this stream, and it's now well past midnight, and I should probably get some sleep at some point. You know, that's generally recommended. But
sleep. What is that?
A few things I want to just highlight. Again, we have the full-on Black Friday sale where everything will be 50% off. Here are some products you might enjoy. This is the bundle, which is really like the ultimate beginner bundle. If you're a beginner to anything in 3D, you can really learn a lot of things here. But let's just go through some of the individual products as well. First, we have Introduction to Maya. This is a course which came out this spring. It's a 12-hour course. It's all taught by me. And we go through how to do all sorts of things. We cover how to do like production-ready modeling. This is just hard surface modeling. Just this one you could throw directly into a movie, and this would work just fine. Then we talk about Arnold, how are samples working, how do you get no noise with reflections, transmission, subsurface, all that. Then we cover how to do some some general retopology, some good practices for this. We make this from scratch using Quadro. Then we show you how to use XGen, which is a pretty tricky pickle to get right. So we cover that. And we cover how to make this helmet from scratch using proper modeling techniques. We show how to do procedural texturing in Arnold. We show how to do the groom in XGen. And then we show how you have to set up some nice shots in Arnold. Basically, it's a full 12-hour introduction. You have something similar in Blender as well, where we take you through how to get started with Blender 2.8, where we're going to be making this nice nondescript item at the end here. We show you all the things you need to know. We have Intro to ZBrush, which teaches you everything you need to know in order to get started with ZBrush. Combined with that, we have Intro to Sculpting, which will teach you how to sculpt as well. These two work really well together. Intro to Painter, most things you will ever need to do in Painter, takes you through how to model, how to texture this thing from scratch. And then finally, we have Intro to Designer. This is the only one of these I didn't actually make. This is made by Chunk Trafficander, and it's a really good tutorial. It teaches you everything you need to know in order to get started as well. So yeah, that's we can take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll be leaving this stream for today. Yes, XGen is a very, very, very tricky pickle. It is a very tricky pickle. Sorry, Fleur. If you want to check out the stream, you can just go back, and whenever the stream is over, you know, you can always just check it out later on.
Yeah, it will be uploaded later on the channel. Yeah.
But alright, guys, thank you so much for joining. We'll definitely be doing more sales throughout the more streams throughout the sale, and I want to do more regular streams as well. I think it's really awesome. A lot of good suggestions for different things, and it's just fun to talk to people about this. Last question here. This is actually a great question. 2 questions. Where are you from? You are, Elfida, from?
I am from Cyprus. I speak Greek, and I eat lots of, what do I eat?
Halloumi.
Halloumi, yes, I eat halloumi.
Diet is 80% halloumi. And I am from Norway, currently living in Denmark. Now the last question we'll take is, what is your opinion about being unable to draw and starting sculpting? I see those 2 things as not attached at all. They can be. You knowing how to draw can help you in sculpting, but it's not a prerequisite to sculpting. You can have somebody who doesn't know how to draw at all, and they're a phenomenal sculptor. Where the 2 are similar is your understanding of form and shape are highly connected between, depending on your success in both sculpting and drawing. So if you understand volume and design really well, you're going to do well in both ZBrush and drawing. But if you don't understand form well, you're not going to be a good drawer, and you're not going to be a good sculptor. So your core fundamental understanding of how shape works is what's important when it comes to your sculpting skills. It's not your technical drawing skills at all. You can be great at doing portraits and drawing just purely from like photos or something, or pure from like just observation. But if you don't understand the volumes, you're not gonna do a crazy good job in sculpting. So you can be you can be a phenomenal 3D artist in every shape of the way, including sculpting, without knowing anything about drawing. So alright, guys, we'll see you later, and Kala Nirta and all that.
Kala Nirta.
Kala Nirta.
That means good night.
Bye bye.